This is the Vision 79 podcast, where my friend Sander and myself, Mason, discuss recent developments in our business and our personal growth. The name Vision 79 comes from our respective racing numbers. Sanders is 40, mine is 39, and we have similar ambition to progress in business and personal growth. Many successful people have started small, just like us, but very few of them have documented their early years. They often say they wish they had, and given we believe in learning lessons from others, we intend to be the first to document our journey from start to finish. Today, we'll discuss why saying no to people is not a big deal, how to react instead of leading people on, the long-term benefits of doing so, and much more. But first, we like to start each episode with a little update on what we've been doing in our business and personal lives this week, so when we look back on these in the future, we can kind of gauge where we're at in our journey. So what do you have for business today? I'll start off with, I cannot remember the name of our instructor in our fluids lab, and it's fucking killing me.
Yeah, if we think of it in the podcast, we'll probably yell it out.
I'm going to be fucking zoned out for this entire episode until I can think of this guy's name.
If you're watching, tell us, please.
Hey, future Mason, future Sander, comment the name of our fluids professor in the comments.
Yes, please.
What do you have for business?
Business this week. Ran a new campaign for some different ads starting on Monday. It looks to be doing relatively well, all considered. So happy about that.
Is relatively well green or better red?
Green for most, like half the days. Okay. And when it's green, it's really green. And then when it's red, it's only red by like a little bit.
So green overall.
Yeah. Good. Yeah. So it's doing well. Sales were relatively good this week. I had one day that was like a complete dud. But it was about a break-even week with the testing and all that stuff. It was a little bit slower here and there, and then it picked up pace randomly. It's just volatile. So I'm working on UGC content right now and working with creators and collaborators to try and get some stability into that sales space.
This is your MILF.
Yeah, there's a lot of like moms that I'm working with.
You picked a good product.
But yeah, so apparently I got like the wrong subscription type on this UGC platform Incense. Apparently, like there's three subscriptions now. There's three subscription types. One's a trial, one's a brand, and then one's like something higher than that. I got the trial one first. Then my mentor was like, that one's wrong. And so I got the brand one. And then he was like, no, that's still not the right one. And he was like, you have to do the product seeding one, which is when you don't have to pay for collaborators or content creators, but they are not like professional. And so you just like send them a free product and then they make some raw footage for you.
Gotcha.
But apparently like I can't find the subscription for the product seeding one. And the only thing I can find on their site is like, you have to specifically go to product seeding and then you can request a demo and sign up for a time to call with them. And I'm like, fucking, how is this intuitive? It wasn't intuitive at all to me when I watched the videos.
Did you get it working?
I haven't gotten it. My call is Monday. That was tomorrow.
Gotcha.
But I have some creators I've been working with the other subscription. I'm paying for them, but like honestly, like I know I'm not like technically have to pay for them, but I'm hoping that it's a blessing in disguise if I like accidentally hire like 3 or 4 professional people for $50.
Yeah.
A person. Like that's a small price to pay. I think for some content that's quality, $50 to $100. So I'm kind of working with what I have right now and just I'll do my call Monday and figure it out from there. But that's been going pretty well. Just going through that side of things, learning it, responding to customers, just kind of getting a grip on things and also getting myself accustomed to like, sometimes you have really good days and sometimes you have really bad days. You might make 700 in sales or you might make 150 in sales. And it just like really varies and depends. And so you got to be prepared for that volatility, especially initially when your ad spend is like lower per se.
Right.
So been working a lot on that and also working 6 days a week at NASA. So
is this like at Northrop we go through periods of being really busy. So I'll have like a month where it's like I'm actually doing stuff nonstop, and then I'll go through like 3 months where it's like things are kind of slow and you have to find work to do. It doesn't come to you. So is this going to die down, or are you doing 6 days a week until you quit?
That happens with us too, but the periods are multiple years.
Oh, fine.
So we have like multiple years of like very big downtime, and then we have multiple years of like super intense work.
So this year's gonna be super intense for you?
Yeah.
How long are you doing 6 days? Do you know, just until the job's done?
Yeah, pretty much. At minimum until April 1st.
And then maybe it lightens up.
Maybe I'll probably switch back. Honestly, hopefully I'm not fucking there April 1st, but technically speaking, I'm supposed to switch back to my original team April 1st.
Gotcha.
So it'll be
Oh, you're not on your original team anymore.
yeah, I'm working on
because you're doing the paperwork stuff for the
players.
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. You work too hard. Too close.
Too much. Because like it is engaging and I solve different problems every day and I like the team that I work with
But
and the
sticks.
pay is increased,
Right.
you know? So it's not an increase on my hourly pay, but I just get paid for the overtime that I do.
Right.
So if I crank out 50 hours in a week or 55 hours in a week, or I'll get paid 15, probably times like 20 after taxes, 32 pre-tax. So that's probably going to come out times 32 is my hourly, 32.50 or 35 or something like that is my hourly. So I'll probably pop back down to like 20, 25 an hour. So it's like if I work 15 hours overtime times, let's say $20, right?
Oh, you're getting
like
paid for
$300.
You're getting paid for the time that you're doing, but it's at a decreased rate.
No, I'm saying like after taxes, what actually hits my bank account
gotcha.
would probably be closer to like 20 or 25 an hour.
Gotcha.
Right. So I'm probably making, 300, 500 extra bucks a week.
Gotcha.
Which ain't bad.
Yeah.
So it helps out a little bit. Helps restore my bank accounts a little bit. I can pay off my cards and stuff like that. But honestly, it's been looking pretty good. I've really dialed back on a lot of the things I spend money on, and so I kind of just like sit at home, or I go to work and work there for 10 hours, and then I immediately go home and work until I can't work anymore, and then go to bed and rinse and repeat. So yesterday I took a little bit of time off, and it wasn't even really time off. I went over to Autobahn and helped them move around a bunch of stuff at Autobahn that they need help with because the right half of that shop is being sold out to someone else. So he's buying the whole, the right single bay, the big bay on the right. So they're going to get one big bay and then that little office bay.
That's weird.
Yeah, but he's buying the whole building and he wants to turn that right bay into like a private, like little fun time room for himself. So he's going to like have his cars and stuff like that and develop out back too and stuff like that. So
I guess it's not all bad. You just can hold less.
Yeah. So they were getting rid of a bunch of stuff and also moving, and they need help with a few things. So
Gotcha.
I went over there yesterday after I worked to help them out and do that. And then, went home and did some dropshipping stuff. And then today, kind of similar routine. I didn't go over there, but just working on various things and whatever. So
when Tyler called them, he said that they were like kind of frantic and they were like, we can't take you, fuck a head gasket. We're like, someone's buying our building. We don't know what's going on. They were freaking out. Like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I'm glad. There was a lot up in the air like 2 weeks ago. So it's kind of starting to solidify out and things are looking good. So
yeah, that's good.
But yeah, just working on dropshipping stuff. This week has been up and down, but overall promising. So I've been happy about that. Happy to start working with creators, even though I got the wrong subscription and I'm paying for, their work. In my mind, I'm like, hopefully the content quality will be better because it's like actually professional people that I'm paying. And like, you can lose fucking $200-$300 in a day on dropshipping, right? Or you can make $200-$300 in a day, right? So for me, in my mind, it's like I could either continue trying to make these like fuck ads that I'm making work and like make them better, or I could pay like 1/5 of what I may lose in a day on someone who does this professionally to make some content that's professional.
Right.
It's like I'd rather just fucking pay them. Like like right now, even like I know that technically I'm supposed to like get it for free with this product seeding method, but the setup time, if it would probably be 2 or 3 days. And like in that time, I could easily lose more money than what I would pay someone professionally to do if I do it now, which is why I just booked them on like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. I was just like, here's $50. Like I'm sending you the product right now, expedited, just make content. Because for me, it's all about time. Like I'm not going to wait around for like the free method when I can pay them a fraction of what I'm potentially losing each day by waiting. I'd rather just pay them. So I'm happy to, get that sorted out. I'm hoping that they can front the money I paid for the subscription towards the product seeding subscription when I do it, because it's like $500 a month.
Gotcha.
So it's expensive. And so I don't really want to shell, and they made you pay 3 months in advance on the brand one I got. So I shelled out $1,500.
Holy shit.
So I'm hoping that $1,500 just doesn't like disappear into the abyss, right? Because I'd really rather that not happen.
Right.
It is on a 0 APR business credit card though, so at least I got 12 months to pay it off.
Thinking smart, dog.
But yeah, I'm trying to. But I also, that business credit card, I've linked it up to my other original dropshipping store now with that original ad account. I don't know if I'm going to run ads on it yet, just because I'm really kind of honed in on what I got now that's flowing. I don't want to divert my attention in any way. I don't have to. But it is there. It is up and running. Probably what I'll do is I'll like do a trickle campaign of like $10 or $20 a day to get that credit card warmed up so that I can eventually transfer it over to my main account and not have it worry about like chase flagging it or something like that. Just to kind of like trickle in a little bit of money, start getting it going and whatever.
Right.
Just so I have that card freed up in case I need it for ad expenses or whatever, 3-6 months down the line. So
Just write the, no, go ahead.
because right now I'm prepaying for all the ads I have to run.
Right.
So if I have to run ads for the next 2 days, like I have to shell out that $800 from my account. I can't just put it on a card and then like wait for my paycheck on Friday. Right. Which like, not a lot of my day, but probably a half hour of my day is like figuring out what amount of money do I have in my account? Who do I send it to first? What can I wait on? What needs to be paid now? Stuff like that. Because between like ad expenses, fulfillment, and then just like generally having a little bit of buffer for bad days, you got to factor all that stuff in, and into that account. And so just budgeting that and buffering that, it takes a little bit of calculation depending on how your week goes or whatever. So.
Right. Did you figure out the fake website that was selling your shit?
Oh, yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I totally forgot about that. I got them flagged for DMCA, which is Digital Media Copyright Act of 1992, I think. Anyways, I flagged them on Shopify for copying my content, wrote up a big report of everything that they were copying and flagging them for all that. Shopify took it down within 12 hours.
Sick, dude.
It was gone. And then I did the same thing for their Facebook as well. And all their ads were taken down, Facebook profile, everything was gone within 24 hours, I think.
Good. How did you find them?
Just through product research, because I use Facebook Ads Library to research products. And Facebook Ads Library is like public domain for everyone. Like even the biggest brands will have their stuff listed on there, and you can see kind of like how long they've been running their campaign, if they're scaling it up and down, stuff like that.
Right.
And so I found them researching information about my product and other competitors. And then I found their stuff and I was like, hey, this is like literally my site and all of my ads. What the fuck?
So if it happens again, you can find it quickly again?
Yeah, I mean, a vast majority of the people are going to be running Facebook ads through Meta, and that will pop up in Facebook Ads Library. And so I just kind of keep an eye on it every couple days or whatever to make sure that, no one's copying my shit and stuff like that. And then I know the flagging process now, and I kind of have like a template that I've built that I can work through and stuff like that. So, that got all taken down, which is awesome. It was funny. I actually saw like a little bump in my sales after I got them flagged.
Does everyone started going to your shop?
Yeah, or it's just like, a lot of it is if you have more people selling the same stuff, Facebook will prioritize the people who are spending the most.
Right.
And so like if he was outspending me, then Facebook is going to put his ad in front of mine, even though it's the same product.
Right.
And so I was probably losing out on some fraction of customer base just because Facebook was prioritizing all his stuff to the larger customer base rather than my stuff.
If he was paying more, right?
Yeah. So
if you pay less, you tell Facebook essentially through your actions, like, hey, be more efficient. But when do you start paying more again? Because if it's beneficial to pay more because your ad goes in front of other like competitors.
You scale up as it does well. So I have like this flow diagram of like essentially what style of campaign are you running? Have you been running it for more than 24 to 48 hours? Is it doing above your return on ad spend or not? And it's like this little tree diagram and you follow it. And then at the bottom, it says like, run it for another 24 hours.
Double the ad spend, decrease the ad spend.
Yeah. Increase by 20%, decrease by 20%, or revise your advertisements entirely. So it's like if you are running a campaign for more than 24 to 48 hours, it's been underperforming for 24 to 48 hours, and you're already at the minimum spend that you can spend on it reasonably. Like what, because like just spending $10 a day, you're essentially pissing the money away. Like my minimum spend right now for me personally is like 50 because, I've found that through my other campaigns, like if it's less than $50 I'm spending, I may not even get a sale that day, right? Because it's kind of like, ideally you'd want your return on ad spend to be like every $30 or something like that. You get a sale, but sometimes it fluctuates either way. And so if you're at like 50, it may be really hard for Facebook to like find if you're under 50, it may be hard for Facebook to find someone to buy your stuff.
Right.
And so I've set my like internal mental minimum at $50 a day. So if I have a campaign that's already at $50 a day, it's been underperforming for 48 hours. I've ran it for more than 48 hours total. And because I'm at that minimum ad spend, I have to turn it off and then revise my advertisements.
That's
right. So it's that rubric versus like if I've been running for more than 24 to 48 hours and I'm doing above my break-even return on ad spend, then increase by 20%, right? Or, if it's only been running for 24 hours and it's above return on ad spend and it's a new campaign, it tells you to wait another 24 hours to make a decision, right? So it's kind of like this flow tree diagram that I follow in terms of that sense. But
Gotcha.
does that answer the question? I kind of forgot the question, but
the question was, when do you start putting more money into it? If giving it less money makes it more efficient, when do you start giving more money?
Yeah, I just follow that tree diagram.
It's essentially give it less money until it learns, and then give it more money to put in front of more people. And then if it goes down, decrease, increase, decrease, increase.
Yep. Yeah, but I just have to be mindful too, because it's like if I increase each of my campaigns by 20%, I might be spending an extra $100 a day on ads for the coming days, and I have to run them for 48 hours. So I got to think, okay, if I'm spending an extra $100 a day for at least a minimum of 2 days, that means I need an extra $200 sent to my ad agency account that I have to prepay for, which means I have less fulfillment, which means where do I have to pull that money from in order to meet my fulfillment costs? And how long is that transfer going to take? Am I going to make it in time? How do I strategize this, right? So that's where like the money strategy comes in. When you're at these kind of like lower amounts, right? You have to strategize more because your margins are smaller. Your ad spend smaller, so your margins on profit are smaller, and the volatility can hit you a lot harder if you don't have like a big amount saved up. Big, in this relative sense being like if I had 5K saved up, like it wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? But when I'm running on like a $500,000 buffer, like a day with no sales does hurt quite a bit, right? And so I got to plan for that and make sure that I can transfer that money properly. For example, like on Saturdays and Sundays, I don't get a payout from Shopify, right? So I have to plan for my weekends to make sure I have enough money forwarded to my ad agency account based on the spend that I predict, even if I increase or decrease, depending on what I decide to do over that weekend. I got to make sure that money's fronted before I get my next Shopify paycheck on Monday and my bigger one on Tuesday, because Saturday, Sunday groups into your Tuesday payout, Friday groups into your Monday payout.
Got it.
Because it's like every 2 days and they count Saturday, Sunday as 1 day and you don't get paid.
Gotcha.
And so that kind of thing, just strategizing that is kind of what I've been working through and getting used to it. This week, I've kind of gotten used to the fact that like you can have up and down days and to just not like look at your phone every hour to check, like just let it run, do your shit. You're not going to change the future. You can't change what you're fucking doing. You're not going to decrease or increase ad spend because it hasn't been, 48 hours total of whatever you're seeing. Right. And so you just got to wait it out. Right. So I've been just kind of getting used to that fact and kind of like buffering that in and, trying to be smart with my expenses and where I spend money or not spend money, how I scale up, because, I could scale everything up 20% and pray that I have a good day for the next 3 days, but that's a really dumb move because it could also be a tank day, just plummet. And then you were spending 20% more on everything, but you don't have the money coming in order to pay that off for the remainder of the week.
Right.
So it just,
pivot.
you gotta be ready for any scenario you give. So I have some Excel sheets that kind of help me out with that. I have like color coded return on ad spend for each of my campaigns. And then I can like easily see like green, yellow, or red, like how is it doing? And it just like that sort of thing is simple. And I could probably just like do it in my head just by kind of like looking at it. But I really like seeing the color coordinated thing because I can really see like how good or bad it's doing.
Right.
And it's really easy for me to like robotically say, okay, this has been doing red for the past 2 days. I need to decrease. Even if like internally my instinct says, oh, it'll do good tomorrow. That's like, no, follow the rubric, right? And so it just makes kind of like that direction a little bit easier in that sense.
Right.
But that's been my week, just dropshipping stuff, really busy at NASA and work, talking with higher ups and management teams about the different issues. Someone told me, like my entire job revolves around fixing a couple core problems, one of them being parts tags, which are used to track different components that are used for actual flight hardware, or GSE, ground support equipment, something like that.
GSC?
GSE.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Dude, that's so funny because I was dealing with requirements for parts tags.
Okay.
With GSC, Global Supply Chain. That's so funny.
one of my main problems is parts tags getting lost. And like I had this one higher up manager tell me, he was like, my entire job revolves around trying to fix this problem and change the practices that we currently have in place so that it isn't a problem for future missions, including Artemis 2,
Right.
more than it already is a problem.
Right.
And he told me verbatim, he was like, you can't change the system, you just have to work around it. And I was like, brother, like my entire job is to change the system right now because it's failing, and it failed in Artemis 1
Yeah.
and you tried to fix it and now it's failing in Artemis 2.
Yeah.
So it's like, but I've been
I'm sure the
really
astronauts
hard.
in Artemis 2 are going to love to hear you can't change the system. You just have to work around it.
Yeah, that's what.
Could you imagine getting in a race car and having your mechanic be like, yeah, man, we couldn't really figure it out, but like, just go give it a run.
Yeah, like the wheel's kind of wobbly, but like you'll probably be fine.
That's what Santa's mechanic told him at Imola in 94. He was like, hey, man, just like go, like, let us know how it feels. We don't really know what's going on. And fucking.
Yeah, so I got some like crazy conversations like that where I was
What'd you
like,
tell him? Were you like, hey, dip ass?
no, I didn't say anything. I was on a call with another guy who likes to hear himself talk more than he likes to hear anyone else talk. And so he responded, thankfully for once. Most of the time he irritates the shit out of me, but that time he responded and started babbling, and so I just let him fucking run with it.
Dude, I've got one guy who just won't stop talking. He talks a lot. And we just moved desks. So now he sits like right around the corner from me.
Oh, nice.
So now I sit in the same cubicle row as my boss, which is great because now instead of like messaging like, hey, do you have a minute? And then walking across the entire room, like it's just like 10 seconds. I don't even have to lock my computer. I could just be like, hey, dude, do you have a second? And he came over to my desk and we were talking, and I was giving him an update on a meeting that I had sat in on and run for him. And I got less than one sentence in before this guy came around the corner and was like, oh, yeah, I was called into that one too. And I took notes and I emailed it to you, boss man. And Mason, I'll send it to you too. But like, here, man, I think I've got a lot of like thoughts on it. And I was like, fuck, dog. Like, I just want to get my update to this guy and like get on with it,
Yeah.
He talks a lot.
But yeah, just a really busy week. It was definitely stressful at times.
At work or with dropshipping?
Oh, both. Just because like the subscription thing really pissed me off when like it wasn't clear to me which one to get, and then I like spent $1,500 on this thing that I thought was right and it was wrong. I was like, fuck. And then like the bullshit dealing with that work with people who are just like incompetent or don't like say they want to help you but don't really want to help you is really frustrating. And then just honestly, I think the exhaustion has gotten to me quite a bit because I haven't been sleeping much and just like working 16, 18, 20 hours a day on whatever I'm working on, whether it's NASA or dropshipping. I think it just ate at me. And so I went to bed, or I actually went to bed at the same time last night, but I just slept in a little bit more. And I feel a little bit better today. So I'm just kind of like trying to like decompress a little bit today so that I can prepare myself for this coming week, just because I haven't really decompressed at all in probably multiple weeks now.
Right.
So I think it's just eating at me. I was just like a lot of like pent up frustration for whatever reason coming into like Friday and Saturday. And I was like, Sunday, I'm going to try and like lay a little bit lower and just like kind of like enjoy the moment and see how things feel. And I kind of like prepare myself for Monday, and Monday will be good. I mean, I'll still do stuff today, obviously, but I'm not going to be in that like rush concentration, work as late as possible kind of stage. I'll probably go to bed around like 11 instead of 1 and just kind of like get a good night's rest and decompress.
Dealing with the incompetence really sucks.
That's the most frustrating thing, is like dealing with management, especially, who is like, oh yeah, we'll get right on this. And it's been weeks. Or like one of the things that was said to me was like, I've gone through all these hoops to try and solve this problem, and I've been having success, and I've been closing these papers going through these different hoops. And so I was like, I came into the conversation with these managers with like, hey, look, I'm jumping through all these hoops just because, the technicians don't upload their tags. What can we do together to make sure the technicians upload their tags? And they came back at me with, you're not supposed to be jumping through those hoops. Why are you doing that? Just go to the management. And I was like, I went to the management 3 weeks ago and you guys didn't do anything. Like it was still a problem. So I took it by my own accord. And like, I wanted to tell, I didn't say this because it was, I have to be polite, because there's just like really weird stigma between NASA and contractors. And it's like, if you're a contractor, like I heard this the other day, which I think is bullshit and I don't fucking follow it at all. It's the dumbest thing ever. But apparently when someone NASA asks you if you need anything, it's an unsaid rule that you say no.
That's retarded.
Which is fucking so retarded. I don't follow that at all. But there are a couple that I try to follow just to make the communication a little bit easier. So it's like I won't lash back at management or whatever. But you know, it was like I was working through this stuff and jumping through these hoops, and I expected to go into the conversation and then to be like, thank you for jumping through all these hoops. You've solved 20 of these problems that we couldn't solve. I've closed dozens of pieces of paper because of the hoops I've jumped through and like worked through this stuff. And they're like, let's figure out a way. And I expected them to be like, let's figure out a way to solve it. But instead they were like, no, you shouldn't be doing that. Like, this is the manager's role, like blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And it was funny because one of the managers actually asked me to start jumping through these hoops because they didn't have the bandwidth to address it themselves.
Right.
And so it's like this like weird difference of communication between internally of the contractors and NASA. And I'm just waiting for Doge to fucking gut it all, you know, but, it was just like that sort of thing really frustrates me because it's like, you know, I don't feel like I'm paid for my value because I could do no work or do a ton of work and I get the same hourly rate. We've talked about this a million times, right? And so it's like I at least expect some appreciation when I close like 20 or 30 different pieces of paper that were unclosable in the matter of like a couple of weeks because of all this extra effort I put in. Like I at least expect a thank you, you know what I mean? Instead, I was like, had my, you know, new asshole ripped out for fucking trying to do my job.
Right.
And I was like, you guys like serious? Like, would you actually, it was really a lot like one of our previous podcast topics where it felt like the management team that I was talking with specifically wanted to hear themselves complain about the problem and tell someone else to deal with it, then they actually wanted it to be solved.
Yeah.
Right. And it was like one of those weird things where like my mental state is so far disconnected from that frame of mind that I have a hard time connecting to it. Like I can verbalize what's happening, but for me to put myself in their shoes, it's really hard because it's like, I just don't think that way.
Right.
Like when I want a problem solved, I just want it solved. I don't want to hear myself complain about it. I'd rather hear myself fucking not complain about it because it's solved. You know what I mean? And so it's just really hard for me to put myself in that frame of mind. And I think that was part of like my frustration this week, working through all the different things and just being super busy and slammed and, you know, whatever. But today I feel a little bit better. I decompressed a little bit last night and just kind of like chilled a little bit and did some like passive things, like, you know, little tidying up around the house and whatever. So
I had Christian ask me last night or the night before to put a bow on the incompetence stuff. That sucks. And I've got one guy right now. I'm supposed to find POCs, like point of contacts for specific requirements. So like if you work on the cooling system, I have to go find you and say, hey man, I'm doing this thing and here's a requirement. Is this in alignment with what you think?
That's a lot of actually similar to what I do right now too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I close paper, but I also get statuses on different pieces of work.
Right. Yeah. So I'm supposed to go find a list I have like 500 requirements that I have to find people for. And like sometimes there's like a group of 3 that are under one person, but I find a lot of people. And I was trying to find a specific group and I didn't know who to go to. And I was confusing a bunch of people in my head because we have like 10 different acronyms of 10 different teams that do the same shit.
Yeah.
And so someone actually heard me on the phone and came around the queue, bro. And he was like, hey dog, I'm the guy you're looking for. Nice to meet you. And I was like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And he was like, listen, this requirement isn't ours. It belongs to this other team. The problem is they have a document that is their like, you know, product that the old guys 10 years ago wrote. Then the old guys retired and the new guys came over and the new guys don't like that document and they don't want to be the ones to answer to it, even though it's on their team and they are responsible for it. So when you go to them, they're going to try to tell you they're not the guys. They are the guys. Cite this document number and they'll like probably have a fit, but like they need to do it. I was like, okay. So I emailed him, gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, hey, I think you're my guy. And he was like, oh, I'm not your guy. And I was like, oh, you are my guy. You have the document that like says so. And he didn't like that either. But I agree with like, I could push way harder. Like I could go to his desk and I could sit down and be like, "Can I leave you?"
That's what I have done.
Yeah.
I send emails, I send Teams messages, I do calls on Teams, I call their office phone, I go over to their office, I go over to the VAB, I contact their managers. Like I go through all these hoops. And then management comes back at me and says, you're not supposed to be contacting all these people. Just tell us what your problem is and we'll solve it for you.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the fuck is the point of my job if you're going to solve it for me? If you would have solved it for me, you would have solved it in 2023 after fucking Artemis 1. But I'm sitting here still fucking dealing with it for you. Yeah. So maybe like a thank you and a little bit of assistance on these couple things I need would be awesome instead of you getting upset with me because I've solved your problem. What the fuck is that?
When I'm faced with that, with the... okay, I've sent an email and he's pushed back on me. What do I do next? I don't think about what would solve the problem. I think, how much am I paid to deal with this? Because if I employed a level 1 engineer and I were paying a level 1 engineer to deal with shit, I would not expect them to go above and beyond and go to their desk and deal with their shit. I'm not fucking paid for it. So what I did was I CC'd my boss on that email and I was like, hey dog, here's the document that I think shows that you're like responsible for it. at symbol, my boss, let me know if I've got this wrong. And now it's in his hands and I'm not dealing with it because like I'm not paid for it. If they want to pay me more, then I'll do more.
There's a part of me that definitely wants to do something like that. The hard thing is that I kind of have the mentality right now that I'll probably only be there for another few months.
Right.
And I kind of want to leave. I want to leave the next people in line that like take on this paper closure stuff and pushing these things with like a really solid foundation. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, I'm a hard worker and like, I know I can work hard. Why don't I just spend the next few months like really pushing to try and get something concrete together for people so that in hopes they can carry it on, just to kind of like do like a last little hurrah of like, I'm not going to be here for long. I'm sorry I'm leaving, but like, here you go kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I've done that already. And
yeah, I haven't.
So it's in someone else's hands, right? So now it's like when I go into my next meeting with my manager, I'm sure he's going to ask about a raise, and I'll go, "Yeah, man, I feel kind of stuck because I'm doing everything that a level 1 engineer is meant to do, and an additional 10%. I'm capable of an extra 500%, but I'm not paid for it, so I'm not doing it." So I would recommend to you and your other managers to give me a raise so that I can start getting more done, because I feel like my hands are tied because I'm not paid enough. Like I'm not doing it not because I'm not capable, but because I'm not paid for it. Like
Yeah.
I'm meeting the requirements of a level 3 engineer, or I'm capable of it. Like I show potential, but I just don't execute on it because I'm not
I
paid.
think that's a really big discrepancy in a lot of these companies and a lot of government jobs. Is like, I remember we have these all hands meetings where we talk with everyone at NASA and it's on a big Teams meeting.
Yeah.
And like, when higher up management responds to pay questions, it's like, shouldn't the dream keep you alive and working and going for this? And I'm like, yeah, the dream is great, but the dream doesn't pay my fucking rent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
the dream doesn't pay the bills. The dream is cool, but it's only cool if I can fucking afford to live properly when I get off of work, right? And so it's like there's that real disconnect of like, just pay us what we're worth. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
anybody at NASA right now could go over to Blue Origin pending that they could get hired and definitely get at least a 15-20% pay increase and probably better hours. Right. Like there's opportunity elsewhere. And if you want to retain good people, like then fucking pay them for it,
But if the government wants to pay their employees more, then they're going to have to divert money away from their animal transgender studies. And so how does that
factual? How will we fund gender transition surgery in Uganda?
Exactly.
Right. It's the priorities.
But the problem is a lot of employees think, oh, if I show my capabilities like above and beyond, like if I'm paid as a level 1 and I do the work at the level of a level 3, then they'll see me, recognize me, and give me a promotion for it.
Largely it's bullshit.
That's not the case.
Yeah.
Well, why would you? If you have a level 1 who's performing above and beyond, why waste more money on them, right? So what I'm sure to do is I talk about shit a lot. So if I'm sitting in a meeting and I see something, I call it out and I'm like, hey, someone should do something about this. And then someone will go, that someone is you. And then I'll go, I'm level 1. You got to find someone else. And so I'm showing that I'm capable of defining the problems and seeing them. And like, I can even like propose a solution that's solid, but I'm not going to go do it because I'm not paid for it.
Yeah.
And I think that my managers are starting to see that. But
for me,
it's
it's kind of like charity work. It's not charity work in the sense of like I'm still getting paid for those hours,
right?
But it's charity work in the sense that like I know I'm doing work that I should be paid a lot more for,
right?
But I'm just doing it for the next 2 to 3 months because I know that I won't be there that long, and I just want to make a little bit of an impact and hopefully help solve this problem.
I get that
for them, and it's just like it is what it is. But yes, a lot of people I know think this like crazy perspective. I mean, it's not honestly crazy to think. It's just it's not commonly seen where you start as a level 1 and you just like do super good work and you like make it up to the top.
Right.
The person who's my manager, who's like 1 level above me, he was at my level for 40 years.
That's terrible.
40.
That's terrible.
It's like, and maybe he wasn't like the greatest above and beyond person, but he was a someone who stuck through it all.
Right.
And like, he's not at the top of the food chain. And it's like, it's not impossible to get to the top starting from the bottom. But I think a lot of it has to do with a lot of the kind of like negotiation and smart approaches that style of what you implement, where it's like, I can identify stuff, but like, you need to help me out on the pay side or the level side. Right.
So. The vision is important for each company, I think. Like ours is, we don't get like Memorial Day off or MLK Day or Juneteenth or any shit like that. Like we don't get holidays apart from 4th of July and Christmas pretty much. There's a couple, but But I don't mind going in on Veterans Day because the work that we do directly impacts the warfighter. right? So it's like when you go into work every day, everyone has an American flag at their desk, and it's not given to you. Like everybody goes out and gets their own flag and puts it on their desk, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a sense of when we're all in here, when we know that our families are having a day off, it's because we're coming into work so that everybody overseas can come home safely. And everybody who's home safe right now is safe because, our products are out there fighting the good fight in another country.
Yeah.
Which is powerful. The problem is I don't work on things that have an impact today. I work on things that are going to have an impact in 10 years. So although the work is important, it's not pressing. So I can afford to say, hey, this is an issue that should be addressed. I'd love to be the one to do it, but you have to pay me for it. If not, you should get someone else on it because in 15 years, there's going to be an issue. It's not like the Artemis 2 is trying to launch in 2026 and like we have 5 crewmen who might
They're
die.
trying to pull the launch date back to fall of this year. I'm like, you guys are out of your
That's
fucking
fast.
minds. There is no shot that thing's going up fall of 2025. No fucking shot.
We have timelines we're being pulled left like earlier, and it is by comparison wild. Like not as soon.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, instead of doing like, 2050, it's in 2030 or something like that. It's like a 20-year jump, but it's in 10 years. Like it's not
Yeah.
it's not that close, right?
Right. The percentage of jump is different. Right. We have like a 30% jump in like a very short timeline. And it's like, I think a lot of it has to do with like this efficiency push from the government, which I honestly think is good. I think there's a lot of fucking waste where I work. I think there's a lot of people who are employed that shouldn't be employed. I think there's a lot of crap that could be cleaned up. And honestly, like if tax dollars are paying for something like a rocket, like it should be efficient. It shouldn't take fucking 10 years to put up one. And when Elon Musk launches 2 a fucking week next door.
And you can recover and reuse them.
Yeah. Like if taxpayers are paying for this sort of thing, it should be more efficient.
And that's a company that actually makes products. Like Artemis 1 did launch 2 years ago. So like they are making real products. And NASA does a bunch of cool shit that actually has applications,
NASA
right?
does great stuff.
Think about all the companies that don't make shit and also have waste.
This USAID.
All the companies that like they don't have a product that actually makes differences like NASA and also has waste in it. Like that's even worse. Like that's not even comparable. Like the waste at NASA is not the same as the waste in USAID.
Yeah.
It's way worse over there.
But there's waste everywhere and it's got to get cleaned up. And, I appreciate that effort. A lot of people are like panicking about like having their jobs versus not having their jobs. And like my perspective on it is like, if you're so concerned about someone coming in and rating your efficiency on a scale of 1 to 10 that you might get fired over it, then maybe you should bump up your fucking efficiency.
Yeah.
Like if you're that fucking worried about it, then you're probably not doing a great fucking job and maybe you should work a little bit harder.
Or your job's
Or
not
just
that
move
important.
somewhere else.
Or your job's not that important.
What are you going to do? Go to Blue and get a 20% pay bump? Oh no.
Right.
Like fucking...
Well, I think a lot of people, it's not just that they aren't doing a good job at their job, it's that their job is pointless and they don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Well, you could be crushing the transgender animal studies in Uganda, but it's still transgender animal studies in Uganda. So you can
and maybe they'll find my job pointless. And that's cool. Like if they want to cut that stuff out and this paper closure stuff out, like go for it.
Right.
Like if you think it's useless, then it's useless. You probably know better than I do because you have a $400 billion fucking space company and you launch 2 a week.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not one to fucking tell you what I think is important.
Yeah,
If you don't think this shit's important, Elon and his team have been around, at least specifically space stuff, for long enough to fucking know what's important and what's not important, right?
Yeah.
And if you're gonna cut it, cut it. Like, I'm not gonna fucking sit here and pretend that like I'm the czar of what's important and not important at NASA. I just know about my specific issues that they are clearly issues and I'm trying to solve them. But if there's a system that could be implemented to completely make the issues go away overnight, then go for it. And fucking won't be employed and so will a lot of other people. But at the end of the day, it's gonna cut a lot of waste out and our taxpayer dollars can go to something better, right? And I think that's wonderful.
You've read about
that.
You've read about the stimulus checks, right?
Yeah, the 20% going back, whatever they recover.
Yeah, their plan is if they can continue making efficient cuts at this rate, then they can afford to give every taxpayer who's paid taxes in the last 4 years, I think, $5,000 stimulus check.
Oh gosh,
which is fucking sick.
I heard
It's your tax
20%
dollars back.
of whatever they recover.
Their goal is to get that 20% to equal $5,000 a person.
Okay.
So like right now,
And the rest will go to 20% to that, 20% to something else, and then I think 60 goes to paying down the deficit.
fucking awesome.
Yeah, I think it's
You know what's crazy? You know all the cuts they've made so far? You've heard about all the cuts that they've made,
they're
right?
crazy.
Crazy cuts, right? How much do you think that equates to if they were to give 20% of what the cuts they've made so far back to the taxpayer?
Like total summation of like all the money.
Like of the 5,000, how close do you think? How many more people do you think they need to get to the 5,000?
I bet they are 15% there.
They're at
10%?
$140 a person.
Okay.
All the cuts they've made.
Wow.
If they were to
It
take
is so rude,
20% and
yeah.
give it back, it's $140 a person. But that really put into perspective to me. I was like, wow, they think they can keep cutting up to like everything they've done now equates to $150 and they're going to get that 150 to 5,000. That's a lot more cuts. And then I started thinking about how big the government is. And I was like, holy fuck, dude, how much waste is there if all of that can be cut afterward? I mean,
Is it
the
Mike
DOD never
Pence
passed
on Joe Rogan recently?
Yeah.
He's been on a couple times. He talks a lot about the government waste and stuff like that, and his podcasts are really interesting to listen to. Really
I haven't listened to his yet.
he talks a lot about the USAID stuff and the different spending that's going on and stuff like that. I can't remember his background. He talked about it in one of the earlier podcasts he did. He's done like 3 or 4 with Joe Rogan at this point. But very interesting podcast.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
check it out. Mike Pence, Joe Rogan.
I'm listening to the Magnus Carlsen one right now.
Okay.
And he was like, I'm thinking about chess all the time. I don't study it like a standard chess person. Like I don't go home and read books about it, but like I think about it all the time. And I think about our fluids professor the same way Magnus Carlsen thinks about chess, because it's been in the back of my mind this entire conversation. I think it starts with an R. It's not like Rajit or something, but I don't know. It's fucking stuck, man. I'm gonna keep.
Damn it. I'm gonna have to pull out my old fluids homework and see.
But anyways, you were mentioning that you were doing more like decompressing stuff the past couple days. I was in a conversation with Christian at Pauhana the other day, and he was like, "What's your creative outlet?" I was like, "What do you mean?" And he was like, what art do you make?" And I was like, "I don't do art."
The one that makes money.
I was like, "I don't do art." And I was like, "I try to acquire a lot of skills. So like this real estate thing is a skill." And he was like, "Yeah, but a skill's not an art." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair." And then I was like, probably driving. I think driving is a form of art. And he was like, "Well, do you use that to convey your emotion to others?" And I was like, "I don't give a fuck about others." I was like, only in road rage. But I was like, I don't know, because I don't express my emotions to others because I could give a damn what other people think, right? But I want to express my emotions to myself, and I can process my emotions better by driving in different styles. And he was like, okay, I guess I kind of see it. I was talking more about like poetry or music or like the Minecraft or something like that, like expressing in a way that you can convey it to other people. And I was like, I don't think I do anything like that. I think a lot of what I do is just trying to get better at stuff. And like even driving is like, when I drive, I don't really think about it as an art form. I think about it as like not even a competition, but kind of like a skill.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. And then I realized I was like, I love to consume art because I love storytelling, like sports storytelling. You heard about the hockey game this past week?
Oh yeah, with USA and Canada.
Yeah, like the Canada booed.
That's a great story.
Beat the shit out of them. Yeah, dude. Like that's a great sports story, right? And then the Daytona 500 just happened, and that was another good story. And before that, the Super Bowl is a great story too. And within the Super Bowl story, there's the the Kendrick and Drake beef. Another great story. Like I love sports and beef stories a lot. So I love to consume that, right? Similarly with music, my favorite type of music is storytelling, which is why I like Eminem so much, because a lot of his songs are storytelling within a song. So I think and same thing with comedy. My favorite form of comedy is the storytelling format.
Yeah.
So I love to consume it, and maybe I would be interested in making it someday, but right now most of my emphasis is on skill acquiring.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you decompress, is it more skills or is it like art?
No, I don't do any sort of art thing. When I'm decompressing, it's usually
Balls deep in Chase's mom.
it's usually like different skills.
Okay.
Like when I'm decompressing, like the past few weeks have been completely dropshipping NASA.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm going to learn about X on, something on YouTube that I'm interested for 20 minutes. Yeah. Or I'm going to work on some podcast stuff, right? Or get ahead on podcast 50 posts.
Thank you.
Right. Or it's, like I've been doing really well in X, Y, and Z areas, but I've neglected cleaning up the garage.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go decompress. I'm still working or doing something that should be done, but it's just a completely different avenue of work.
Yeah.
And so my decompression it's maybe not like directly skill building always, but I definitely do stay productive in some sense. Like I don't very quickly I get sick and tired of like sitting down and watching a movie or something like that. Like I can't spend more than like 20 30 minutes on watching something.
You know, at work the other day, I like to watch nonsense videos while I eat. Right. So
me
during breakfast, I watch Alex Hormozy sales videos, and then during lunch, I watch brain rot. But the brain rot is like Veritasium brain rot. Oh, sorry, bud. Where it's up here now.
It's Red Bull. It's good luck.
Yeah, it's akin to
Where is
champagne,
it?
right? You got it. It's like right.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I just rub it in. That's fine.
anyways, brain rot. But the brain rot is like Veritasium, so it's still educational. It's just like not related to anything that I'm doing.
Yeah.
The newest one is on the quantum computing Microsoft chip. Have you seen that?
No.
Microsoft came out with their first quantum computation microchip. It's more powerful than every other microchip in the world that's ever been created combined. And it's because standard computers use a bit that's either a 0 or a 1. So if you want to do like whatever, like 7 squared, it could, like, you take 5 bits and they can only be a 1 or a 0 at a time. And so then they have to run each calculation one at a time. Well, with quantum computing, the qubit is a 1 and a 0 at the same time. This is the double slit experiment where particles act like waves and particles
When observed, they act like particles. When unobserved, they act like waves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that methodology, but it's in computing. So it's a 0 and a 1 at the same time. So you can run things way, way faster, right? The problem is they can run like a huge number of calculations at the same time, but they spit out a huge number of possible answers at the same time. So for 7 cubed, it'll do like, okay, well, there's 7 times 7, and then there's 7 times 7 times 7, and then there's 7 times 7 times 7, right? And so those are your 3 answers. 7 times 7, 49, and then 7 times 7 times 7, 49 times 7, right? Those are your 3 answers. Well, up till now, they can compute it and get this matrix of answers, but they don't know which is the right answer because they can't pull it out. But what this microchip does, that Microsoft developed, it knows the right answer. So now they can actually harness the quantum computing capability in this tiny microchip. Yeah, it fits in the palm of your hand. Anyways, that's the new Veritasium video. So I've been watching shit like that.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting to me. But what I recently got into was it's a 10-minute analysis of movies. And so have you ever seen Good Will Hunting?
Oh, yeah. Great movie.
I love that movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. I won't take 2.5 hours to sit down and watch it again. But what I will do is watch a 10-minute video during my lunch break that breaks down the beats of what makes the movie so good, and what makes that story so strong. And I was like, holy shit, I love this. And so then I watched one on a movie I haven't seen yet, Whiplash, which I've also heard is really good, but again, won't take 2.5 hours to sit down and watch. And I feel like I got maybe like 80% of the vibes from the movie from watching this breakdown. When I have time, I'd love to sit down and watch it. But like, let's face it, if I enjoy movies but don't have the time to actually do them, this is an efficient way to kind of scratch the itch. And I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah. I like taking, when I say decompression, it's like I like taking 10 to 30 minutes once every other week or every 2 weeks to just do something that's unrelated to the things right in front of me.
Right.
Because it's like, it's a small amount of time, but it can be a really good reset, especially if you're really, really stressed.
Yeah.
Just to take those 20, 30 minutes and kind of decompress by taking your mind off of things and doing something still productive or that's teaching you something or that you find entertaining, but just completely disconnected from your day-to-day.
Yeah.
Right? I enjoy that.
I hear you.
So, you want to dive into the... Oh, you have more... What?
Are you done? Is that your business update?
Yeah.
We're 45 minutes in. Do I hear about my business update?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So
I got confused. You paused for a long time. I was like, what's going on?
our next segment. Next segment
of the Sanders business update.
Eventually, I think what this podcast is going to do is morph into probably just updates.
Probably. I was thinking that as I was going through my 45-minute update.
Yeah. I think that the further we get into stuff, the more we'll have to talk about. But
And then
now,
it'll become a lot more related to our business stuff too. Like you'll have updates on real estate on top of tips and tricks you learned.
Right.
And I'll have updates on dropshipping on top of tips and tricks I learned. Right.
Well, ultimately, this is meant to be like a documentation of our journey. Right. But in the early phases, it's like I'm just reading as much as I can. And that's what it is. I'm just like fucking like failing repeatedly and figuring it out. And there's not a lot of huge updates because like there's only so much I can say on, well, I did 116 hours of real estate course. Like I can talk to you about it, but it'd be fucking boring. So eventually like we'll have enough going on that it could be more documentary. But for now, we'll keep doing the themes. Plus I like the philosophical themes anyways. But anyway.
Yeah.
Last week I left off on I was writing a list of questions so that when I go interview brokerages, I'm informed and I know how to talk to them, right? So Grace kept all of her paperwork from her orientation with Remax Elite. So she walked me through essentially like a faux interview with the brokerage because she has all the answers. I'm like, walk me through the pamphlets and stuff. And I was like, okay, I'm now kind of figuring out what the critical points are. So the critical points are generally like, what's the commission split? You're going to owe your brokerage annual and monthly fees. If you pay it all up front, then you get 95% of each commission and you give the brokerage 5%. If you want to pay it over the course of a year, they take like 30% and you get 75. So if you have like 10 grand to drop today, you're good. If not, they take a part of your every commission you make throughout the year. So I did the math. And if you're earning over $31,000 in commission a year, it works out that you should just pay it all up front. Otherwise, to keep the 70-30 split. So anyways, I wrote out a long list of questions. That's what Tyler was talking to me about today. Cause I sent the list to him and he was like, oh, don't like ask about like a company's core values. Cause like no one gives a fuck about that. And I was like, well, I give a fuck about that because I'm a ride or die motherfucker. And the brokerage that you work for is going to be on all of your advertisements. And I don't want to advertise a company that doesn't give a fuck about growth. I want to advertise for a company that wants to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so he was like, yeah, how do we do whatever? Anyways, so then I calculated what the starting costs are going to be because I need NAR membership, National Association of Realtors, right? So I'm a real estate agent right now. A realtor is a trademark title of a real estate agent who has passed the heightened ethics criteria of the National Association of Realtors. So when you're a member, you're a realtor, not a real estate agent. I guess you're both, but most brokerages require you to do that because it's like a code of ethics. It certifies that you know what you're doing and you're going to do it correctly, right? So that plus your state and local fees to be a part of those real estate groups, plus getting your access to the multiple listing service, the MLS, which is like Zillow for real estate agents, and a couple other things. There's this thing called eKey, where if I like, contact a real estate agent and I go, hey, I've got some people interested in looking at the house you're selling tomorrow. Do you mind if I stop by? And they go, I'm busy. I'm whatever. I'm working that day. Just go to the house. Here's the code to a lockbox on the front door that has the key in it to let you in.
Yeah.
That's like $15 a month. So I calculated it all up. So to get started, it's going to be $1,700 like right now. Got in $300 a month recurring once I sign up with the brokerage. And then every year from here on, it's going to be like $4,600 annually. So
Paid in one sum?
no, it's over the course.
It's over the course of the months.
Yeah. So sometimes they have, the reason I don't calculate it into my monthly recurring is because annually with your brokerage, they'll have you pay like $400 on January 1st and then a monthly fee after that. And so I'm calculating in that $400 for annual recurring next year, the year after the year after. But right now I'm facing short term $1,700 as soon as I pick a brokerage and then $300 a month after that. So the clock to make sales starts ticking immediately. I don't have that money, so I have to kind of wait until my tax refund hits, but that'll pay for it. The bright side is I have my first 2 leads, which is sick. Justin's looking for an apartment. And my coworker, Bob, came to my cubicle and he was like, how's it been, man? I haven't talked to you in months. And I was like, I just got my real estate license. And he was like, I'm looking at a house. And so I was like, dude, sick.
Yeah.
But what sucks is that I can't work with them because I don't have a brokerage and I can't do any work for them anyways, because it's illegal to do work for free. It's illegal to do real estate work for free.
Got it.
But what I've done is I've referred them to Grace. And then as Grace is doing the stuff, I'm kind of like taking notes alongside her and like helping communicate and stuff. So I'm not technically doing the work, but we're helping Justin find an apartment and move out because he's having problems with his roommates. And then Bob is looking to move out of the house that he rents right now to buy a new house. And he's going to rent out some of those rooms to his friends. And so I kind of put the brokerage questions on pause until last night. I finished them last night and started working those leads. But it was cool because I got to learn about foreclosed properties because the house that Bob is looking to buy is foreclosed on. So he was like, do you know anything about foreclosed properties? And I was like, yes, I do. I did not. I learned about it. Now I do. I took a guess. He was like, what is an as-is property? And I was like, okay, let's fucking deductively reason this. And as-is property is like, they're going to sell it to you the way that it is, right? But I know you can't sell a property without an inspection period. Meaning if you want to buy a house, we say, okay, we accept your offer contingent that you do the inspection period and don't find like problems, right? Every sale, you get at least 2 weeks to have inspectors come out and look for whatever radiation poisoning or fucking cracks in the foundation, right?
Yeah. Carpenter, ants, or whatever.
Exactly. If at any point in there, you find something you don't like, you can come back to the bargaining table and say, hey, I found carpenter ants. I want you to pay for a bug bomb and then I'll buy the house. Or you can say, I found a crack in the foundation. No deal. I'm out. And no penalty to either party, right? When you're selling something as is, which is what a lot of foreclosures are, because the bank essentially had a client default on their mortgage, not paying them, and now they just want to liquidate and get out of it. So they're like, listen, we're not going to haggle over the carpenter ants. I'm not going to talk to you about the crack in the foundation. It's sold as is. You still have your 2 weeks to do an inspection and figure out what problems it has, but I'm not going to lower the price any for you. Just fucking take it or leave it. And that's what a foreclosed property is. What's interesting is if you find a foreclosed property that has an issue, like for example, the one Bob's looking at has a crack in the foundation, but it hasn't had a roof permit since 2005. So although the foundation is the key issue, it would also be an issue with the roof because banks won't lend you a mortgage if the roof doesn't have, if the roof has less than 3 to 5 years of life left. Because they don't want to sell you a house and then immediately there be roof problems. They don't want that because then if you default on your mortgage, they have a house with no roof and no one paying the mortgage. And so we were able to find that through the MLS that it doesn't have a new roof. Okay, bummer. But you can have an inspector come out for $100 and sign off on a paper that says, yes, it still has 3 to 5 years left in life. And then you give that to the bank and they'll give you the mortgage. Well, worst case scenario, he comes back and goes, hey, the roof does not have 3 to 5 years left. It's probably going to go in the next 16 months, right? You go, fuck. So if you get an FHA, the first time home buyer's loan, you only have to pay 3.5% down, right? And then you pay like a mortgage premium for like the life of the loan, usually, unless you refinance. I learned about a 203K loan, which is essentially, it's the same 3.5% down payment loan that you would get for a mortgage from FHA. But if a new roof is going to cost $10,000, they'll also give you $10,000 to do the roof. And that's critical because no mortgage would give you a conventional loan otherwise. And now the FHA loan is allowing you to do it. They'll lend you the money, but your interest rate goes up a little bit for the life of the loan. So it's kind of like, well, okay, I can pay for a new roof and finance it into my mortgage so I don't have to pay all that money right now. And I get a loan because a conventional loan wouldn't give you the money anyways. So I learned about all this foreclosed property stuff. And I was like, dude, this is awesome. I love learning about this. And that was a lot of fun. So ultimately that house isn't going to work out, but we're looking for other stuff too.
Yeah.
And at the same time, he was like, it's so funny. My dad called me yesterday and is telling me that he's going to sell the house that he's currently renting out from his dad. He's living in the house and renting other rooms from his dad. And so he might be needing an agent too. So I'm stoked.
Very cool.
Now it's getting to the point where it's like, okay, if I can actually generate leads just from like my social network, I haven't done any advertising or anything like that yet. Because I don't have a brokerage. You can't advertise if you don't have a brokerage. But I'm happy to know that I can get leads without like super sweating, but it's just a bummer that I can't really do much with them right now.
Yeah.
So I got my brokerage questions finalized. And so now last night or 2 nights ago, I made a formula. I want to know what the best brokerages in Brevard are because I don't want to sign up with a rinky dink brokerage that as soon as you see my business card, you're like, oh, he works for that company.
Yeah.
I want it to be a little bit more premium, a little bit more like, trustworthy, I think is what I'm looking for. And I rate my trustworthiness on Google reviews because everybody in the game knows that referrals are everything. And they want you to refer on Google because it's an impartial third party that never goes away. So all I have to do is pull up the Google reviews for every brokerage in Brevard, list it all out in an Excel sheet. I wrote a formula with ChatGPT that puts a weight on it. So like a 5-star rating with 300 reviews isn't as strong as a 5-star rating with 1,000 reviews. Likewise, a 1-star rating with 2 reviews isn't as powerful as a 3-star rating with 10 reviews because although 1 star is lower, the 3-star has more reviews and therefore it's more accurate. There's a chance that, you've served a bunch of customers well, not well enough to get a review, but decently well. So I have the weighted average at like an average of a 4-star rating. And then the more reviews you have, the less the 4-star rating matters and more the review score matters. Yeah. So that 2 review on the 1 star is pulled up a little bit by the overall average. And so I'm in the middle of doing that now, but I'm excited to see what the math comes out. There's like 260 brokerages in Brevard. And I started doing it and I was like, maybe I'll only do the ones that have like more than 4 stars. And I was like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do all of them. So I started doing all of them.
Wow.
And so hopefully I can get that done tonight or tomorrow. And then I'll have my list of brokerages to interview with.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then the last thing I have is I got an email from my manager the other day and I'm getting a raise and a bonus. Not a promotion, but a raise and a bonus. So my raise takes me to $82,000 a year and my bonus is $1,700, which is exactly what my startup fees are.
Look at that.
For getting everything else. That's
awesome.
That hits March 7th.
Okay.
So if I don't get my tax refund by then, I will be getting my bonus by then, and I know I'll have the money to do the startup fees. So it's kind of working out to start interviewing this week.
Very nice. Well,
Yeah.
congratulations.
There you go. That's my TED Talk.
It's cool that like both of us are in our separate fields, and like, you know, I enjoy the learning process too. There's definitely times where I get frustrated or I'm like, what the fuck did I just spend money on? Did I just get the wrong
Right.
thing, right, with that subscription in particular? But it's nice to see like both of us moving in our directions, enjoying the learning process, pushing through it. And like, I think that, you know, maybe 5 years down the line, when there's some more viewers on this podcast and we've accumulated some wealth and kind of gotten somewhere and people are watching this, like, go back and watch these older videos and just look at, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out how to build a business.
You're a rocket scientist.
I know, but like, it doesn't take that, you know.
It doesn't take like a nuclear engineer.
Right.
wait.
Yeah, I'm kidding. Fuck it. It doesn't take a space science engineer.
Yeah.
But you know, it's like, it doesn't take anything super duper special to build something meaningful. You just got to be able to enjoy the process, even through the ups and downs. And even if you don't enjoy it, to just push through those hurdles like you did with the course. And, you know, I did with the bullshit tests that all failed initially for me on these ads and stuff like that. Like, you just got to be able to put one foot in front of the other and just keep going.
Yeah.
You know, and if like you get discouraged and you need to like, you know, 20, 30 minutes off or a day off or whatever, like, you know, just keep going at it. Just don't lose sight of that, you know? And I think that I think strongly that my words today will reflect where we are both at in 5 years from now.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if all we do is work, then
Yeah. I mean, something's
to work
it's either going to go like this or it's going to go like this. And I think the more you work, the higher probability it goes like that.
What does the Hormozy say? It's the Hormozy quote is like, I will not fail if I do not quit, or something like that. It's basically that.
I only fail when I quit. I think.
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think what's interesting is that in both fields, the common trend is there's a lot of people who start it and not a lot of people who see success in it because they stop.
Yeah.
And I don't even think it's like that they stop. I think it's that they just don't put in enough effort and then it peters out.
Yeah.
And
because everyone's perspective of like, what is the enough effort is different, right?
right.
Like Joey might think that 2 hours of research onto X topic is enough effort to determine whether this is, you know, going to work or not going to work. And then like Bobby might think that he will only know after 100 hours or 1,000 hours whether it will work or not work. And then like those two different people are going to have different results because one of them has a much, you know, a delayed need for gratification at the end, right? And you know, Hormozy talks a lot about like the longer you can delay a reward, it's a predictor of how successful you will be in the end.
Right.
You know?
And it's great because I'm on a fucking dopamine drip. Like I haven't made a sale. I'm nowhere near my first sale, but like I really, really thoroughly enjoyed learning about foreclosed properties the other day.
Yeah.
And so as long as you're learning and as long as you're progressing, as long as you're figuring out how the fucking the MILF ads works, like as long as you're learning a lesson, then it doesn't really matter.
I love analyzing the different ads and looking at different companies and figuring out what they're doing and why. And like, you know, I would be lying if I said I could like see what they're doing differently than I do in every respect, but I can see some pointers. I'm starting to see some, like, at least like, you know, puzzle pieces to the bigger puzzle. And I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. Or like, oh, I wonder how that's working. Or like, oh, I see them scaling that. I wonder why. How is that different? Like, I enjoy that little hunt. It's like a little game. You know? I even enjoy like the budgeting aspect of it because it's like, okay, like when can I do this fulfillment? When is it too late? What's my priority for money? How do I need to transfer this stuff? How long is it going to take to transfer? Are my fees, if I wait, I'm going to have to transfer from my Chase instead of my Wise international account, and the fees are going to be higher from Chase. So is it worth me paying in advance from my PayPal at a 2% fee instead of a 5% fee from Chase? Right. You know, like these different fulfillment strategies. Like I like all that strategizing and planning and stuff like that. It's fun and it's learning. You know what I mean?
Resource allocation, like the video game.
And I learn something new every day, and I learned that. Yeah.
That's where I differ. I saw an Alex Hormozy TikTok recently where he was like, it doesn't matter if you enjoy the work, just do it because it needs doing. And I was like, well, that's not entirely true. Because if I were learning about fucking oil rigs, which I'm not passionate about, I can do the work, but I want to kill myself. So it's like, you have to have some level of interest, even if it's not a passion. Like you have to fucking care about it. Like you have to enjoy the work a little bit. Because if you don't enjoy it at all, like if I had gone back to the dropshipping thing and didn't enjoy it at all, then I wouldn't be seeing nearly the success that you're seeing because I'm not fucking engaged. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. And I think there are times where it's definitely less engaging, right?
Yeah, there's always the grind or the slog,
of course, but there's like still some spark in there that you love, right?
Yeah, you have to have a certain level of, you have to enjoy the pain, right?
Yeah,
and like you're not gonna enjoy, like I don't mind the pain from rowing, even though it's really hurtful. Like doing the rowing hurts, but I enjoy the process because I enjoy the skill, right? But getting tackled in football, the pain isn't worth it for me because although I think football is interesting, it's not interesting enough to get CTE. And I don't enjoy the pain of getting fucking my stars knocked out by a front lineman, right?
Right.
And so I think it's a matter of finding a topic that you're interested in and are passionate enough about to go through the grind period and make it through the other side and not like get totally disparaged by it. Because I think if I went into a field where I wasn't interested at all, then it's like, if I'm not interested at its best, then I'm definitely not interested at its worst. And if there's no passion there, then what's the point? Like, like inevitably, even if I succeed, I won't be succeeding as much as if I were really passionate about it, right?
I agree.
All right. Are you ready to get into this? Okay. So today's theme is why it's not rude to say no. I very frequently experience people agreeing to plans that they don't end up going to, telling me they have skills they don't have, and agreeing to ideas they don't really believe in, all because saying no is uncomfortable. That's understandable. Letting people down doesn't feel good, but is the pain inflicted by letting them down with your actions later on by not going better than simply telling them no in the first place? So our first segment is why saying no isn't that deep, bro. Saying no is not a personal attack on someone. It's a decision you're making for yourself. All too often, I feel people assume the conversation is about them when actually it's not. The person saying no is making a choice for themselves, not with the intent of slighting you. That's how I see it, at least. Are you offended when someone tells you no to something?
No.
Fucker.
Largely no. I am not offended. I value honesty. I think that like if someone's saying no, they can't do something, like I get it. You know what I mean? I might be disappointed, but to be offended, no, I really don't think so. I think if someone's words hurt you that much, it's probably a you problem. You know, like if someone else's words are that impactful to your belief in yourself or how you feel about yourself, then you should probably look in the mirror.
Yeah.
You know,
It does hurt when someone says yes and then doesn't go.
that is, yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Because I think that, you know, the more I go through life, the more I realize that the importance of having your thoughts, your words, and your actions in alignment.
Yep.
And the more I try to do that myself, the more I'm like, hey, what the fuck when someone else doesn't do it, because of the benefits in doing, having that alignment between your thoughts, your words, and your actions.
Yeah. What's interesting is when you ask people why they didn't, like when they say yes and then it turns out to be a no eventually, and then you ask them, why didn't you just say no to begin with? A lot of the times the answer is, well, I didn't know. And something came up or something else. It's like always an external thing.
Yeah.
You know that Hormozy quote of, you can really judge someone's character by how much responsibility they take when something goes well versus when it goes poorly.
Yeah.
Like you won't take responsibility when things go poorly, but you will when things go right if you're kind of a shit person. But you take more responsibility when things go wrong than if they went right. It's kind of like that. And so if you say no to me and it's because you got like panicky or like you didn't want to like upset me or you wanted to try to make it work and then it didn't work out, you can have one conversation and be like, hey, don't do that. Like, just tell me no if you mean I'm not going to be hurt. And they can improve that.
Yeah.
But you can really tell if someone says yes and then it ends up being a no and then they like defend it staunchly and it like escalates, then they're probably not someone you want to be asking things of anymore in the future anyways.
Right. I would agree with that. Like there's a few things that I've said yes to in the past that I followed through on even when I didn't feel like following through on them.
Yeah.
Like maybe like car work, or someone texts me about a resume they want me to look at really quick just to give them feedback or whatever. And I'll say yes. And then down the line, I'll be like, fuck, like I don't want to do this right now. But, you know, I try to stick to my word and what I say. And so I'll follow through even if I don't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Or like with the shop clean out thing this weekend, like I didn't really have time, but they've been really good and helpful to me, you know, Alex's family, in a lot of different cases when I've needed help. And so it's like I'll make time for that. And you know, even though I like in this moment don't really have time and it's gonna be stressful for me, like I'll go and help them out. You know what I mean? But just like sticking to that and, you know, not backing out of the decision you made, I think is important.
Yeah. It's like if you say yes to things that you want to do, you're committed to doing it. And then if you say yes to things that you don't want to do, that same commitment is still there. You can be less or more excited about it, but if you say yes, stick to it, right?
Right.
Because honestly, I think that the offense comes in not in saying no, but in saying yes and then not doing it. I think that people probably would respect directness more than avoidance, right? So even if you directly say like, no, I'm not interested in that, or no, I won't do it, it's better than like stringing them along. So like,
Yeah. That's why I think that NASA thing where it's like you can't tell NASA that you need anything when they ask you. I think it's so bullshit.
right,
Because it's like, what's the fucking point of you asking me the question if you don't want an answer?
right, exactly.
To make you feel good?
Yeah.
Like,
That's stupid.
yeah.
Or like,
No.
dude, like 2 weeks ago, someone was talking to me about the Renaissance fair that Pahana went to yesterday.
Mm.
And they were like, you should go, it'll be a ton of fun. And I was like, it's not my thing. And they were like, oh, come on, like but it's like a team bonding thing. And I was like, I'm just not
I don't
interested.
want to bond.
It's not my thing. I'd love to bond, but I don't want to do that. Like that's
Yeah.
time for me, And so then yesterday, like I was Sarah stopped by Kraken and I was like, how was it? She was like, we had a ton of fun. You should have come. And I was like, not my thing. She was like, okay, like that's fine. But I think that people are oftentimes, they'll do things that they aren't particularly interested in because they feel it's a good opportunity to like get out of their box, like get out of their shell. But if I have enough information about a Renaissance fair to tell that I don't want to do it, I'm just going to say no.
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal. Like I don't succumb to peer pressure, right? And I feel like people say yes to things that they don't want to do. I think that saying yes to things that you don't want to do and then doing it sucks as much as saying yes to things that you don't want to do and then not doing it. Because either way, like if you don't want to do it, don't fucking commit to it because either you're upset doing it or the person that invited you is upset because you didn't do it because you said yes.
I'd argue that saying yes to something and then not following through with it is probably more painful than saying no to something and dealing with those consequences.
Probably because you're deferring the pain to someone else,
Yeah.
right? But saying yes to something that you don't want to do and then going through with it and not having a good time doesn't make sense to me either if you just said no in the first place. Not something where it's like you're repaying someone like this Alex thing with the shop.
yeah.
That's different. That's like doing someone a favor that's not the same. I mean something where it's like this Renaissance fair. Like it doesn't hurt anybody to not do it. So like don't say yes because you're being peer pressured because you're worried that they're going to like you less if you don't go, right?
Right. I would agree.
Yeah. That's how I feel about it. I think there's a disclaimer to note here, which is that no doesn't have to be rude, but some people are rude when they say it.
Yeah, I think delivery is really important.
Delivery is huge. And I've come to realize that delivery is hugely important in like everything you say. There's one woman, Sydney, who she doesn't go to Kraken or Pow anymore, but she used to run the open mic at Kraken and now she's going to Nocturne a lot. She's been running people out of bars. Like she'll go to a bar and she'll like be friendly with them and then she'll flip on them and start being really sarcastic and passive aggressive and stuff. And it's interesting because the further I've gotten into this personal growth stuff, the more I've come to just not put a huge amount of sarcasm on my words or a huge amount of inflection. Every once in a while I do like heavier inflection, but it's not like I'm not a fucking shit. Like you can say something that logistically isn't mean, but if you say it with the wrong inflection, then it sounds mean. And if that's the case, like you can ask directly, like, hey, did you mean that to be insulting? And they'll say yes or no and you make it awkward. But like I don't understand why you need to make something sarcastic in the first place. But when you're saying no to somebody, be mindful of that and then don't use like when someone was like, are you going to the Renaissance fair? I could have been like, no.
All right.
They're like, oh, like why? And if I were being sarcastic, I could be like, oh, it's because I'd like to have sex and like you virgins are gonna have a lot of fun on your own. Like you could have been a shit about it, but instead I was just like, no, it's not my thing. And like that,
Yeah.
you're sending the same message but with different intentions.
That's kind of what I found. Like at the latter portions of this week, I was just like starting to be a little shit to like everything I encountered.
Yeah.
And I was like, I should probably take like a couple hours at some point. I had to like reset myself.
Right.
Just because like, it was like people were like, I had this thing where I was uploading parts tags for engineers on their behalf and then having configuration management and quality review it so that I could close the paper.
Right.
And I would upload the tag, the name of the tag, and then I would say missing parts tag acquired.
Right.
And since I was saying the tag that was missing is now found and it is uploaded, but instead of writing all that, I said missing parts tag acquired. And I had this QE who is like, what do you mean by this comment? And I was like, the missing parts tag was acquired. And like essentially repeating exactly what the note said. And they were like, "But like, what do you mean by acquired?" And I was like, "It's acquired.
We have it now.
It's uploaded, right?" But like, I was doing it in like a really shit ass way, where it was like, "Would you like me to acquire more information for you?" Like shit like that. And I was like, I should probably fucking take a break before I get fired.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's like stuff like that. Like, I wouldn't even say it's like the true colors come out because like that's not who I am.
Right.
But I think stuff like that I'm still working on for sure.
Yeah.
Like I'll definitely get into my moments where I just like I don't want to fucking put up with it and I don't care. You know what I mean? Because it's like just like tunnel vision on one thing, and it's like anything that diverts from that, like this stupid definition of acquired question, or it's like I just couldn't fucking give a shit less.
Right.
Right. So I think there's definitely a balance between like staying on your trajectory and focusing on what you have at hand, but also not being a shit ass to the people around you, right?
Yeah.
Right. There's a balance in there. But what I found was like I was slowly getting closer to like just being a shit ass, and I was like, I should probably take a break and reset, and then continue on my path.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So or it's
That
like
could be-
I haven't been to the to PAL much, right? But like I wouldn't go there and be like, oh, like you should be at home working,
Yeah.
because like plenty of people like you work at PAL effectively, right? I don't work as effectively I've found at least recently at PAL because I need 3 screens. That's probably the primary reason is like I need 3 screens to do the work I'm doing. But it's like I could be a total shit ass when I go, but it's like no, I just go when I want to like decompress a little bit because that's what I've found at least recently what works best for me.
Right.
And kind of like you, not putting a ton of sarcasm or inflection, or when I find myself putting a ton of sarcasm or inflection on it, I, divert myself out of that situation to be like, okay, reset. Like this isn't, it ain't that deep, bro.
Right. It's almost like when you're using the sarcasm, you're saying you're not saying the quiet part out loud. You're leaving it quiet. So like if you're sarcastic about something, why are you afraid to say it plainly?
Right.
If you wouldn't say
For
it
me,
plainly,
it's like,
don't
I
say it
think
sarcastic.
because I want to be a shit ass.
Right.
And it's like, for me, it's like when I self-reflect and I'm like, okay, I want to be a shit ass right now. That's not really me. So let me take a break.
Right.
Let me pause on this situation.
Yeah.
You know?
I think other people, like the Sydney example, they probably get a little bit of attitude with themselves instead of just saying it plainly. Like, if you have a problem with someone, just say it straight. And if you aren't willing to say it straight, if you're only going to talk behind their back or be sarcastic to their face, like, maybe hold up a mirror and consider why you're saying it that way.
Right.
And so then when you're saying no to people, I think that there's a balancing act, because on the one hand you could be like, no, Verge, like being a shit, and then you can also be overly apologetic and be like, oh my god, no, I'm so sorry, like I can't make it the day, like my grandfather's gonna die on Friday and I can't go. Like you being overly apologetic, like you don't owe it to anybody to go to the Ren Fair, dude. Like just relax. Like it's okay to just say no to say no.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that honesty is better than forced politeness. So if you say yes to things just because you feel like being nice, or like if you say no but you're really apologetic about it, it's like most times people can see through that shit. So it's like just say yes or say no. You don't even need to like a reasoning for it unless they ask. And if they ask, you could just say the honest answer, which is it's not for me. You don't have to make up an excuse, right? It's okay to just be. It's like the blatantness doesn't have to be blatant. What was that episode we did?
Blatantly honest isn't rude.
Yeah,
I believe.
it was like blatant honesty versus bluntness or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's exactly that. It's like you can tell the truth and be rude about it, or you can say the truth and not be rude about it. And I feel that most times people are only told the truth when it's being rude. And so they assume, okay, well, I don't want to do it because I don't want to also be rude. And they don't get a lot of people who say no to things just because they don't want to. And I think it's a lot of times people don't say no to things because they don't want to, because they're afraid of offending the person, or they don't want it to seem like the other person is less important to them than they are to the other person, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I definitely struggle that we talked about it a bit on the podcast, but I definitely struggled in the past with saying no. And I think I've had an easier time, like the more I just go through life of like being trying to do the right thing and be a good person, but also realizing that I can't say yes to everything because then I'd have time for nothing.
Yeah, exactly. And like you'd say yes to things that you're not even interested in doing.
Right.
So like, dude, like a week or two, it was during the Daytona 500. I was watching the Daytona 500 on my laptop and Joel and Christian came over and they were like watching over my shoulder with me. And while we were watching, they were telling me a bunch of stuff. I don't know, like, oh, would you do NASCAR? And I was like, yeah, sure, sounds like fun, whatever. And then Joel was like, dude, we should go skydiving. And Christian was like, yeah. And then I was like, you guys have fun. It's not for me. And they were like, why not? And I was like, well, the risk isn't worth the reward. And they were like, what risk? And I was like, pardon? And they're like, what risk? And I was like, well, if your chute doesn't open, you either die or are paralyzed from the forehead down. And I don't want any of that. And they were like, no, dude, there's like less people get in parachuting accidents than are struck by lightning or whatever. And I was like, there's this surprising amount of people who get struck by lightning every year, dog. And like, it's not worth it. And the risk is there regardless, right? And you can mitigate risk by information. So if I learn to pack a parachute and I pack my own parachute, I might be willing to do it. The problem is I definitely don't have the impetus to learn how to do it. So I would have to trust someone else, a stranger likely, whose business it is, who packs 35 parachutes a day and doesn't really give a fuck about me as long as his chute is packed well. He gets paid $15 an hour. He doesn't care, right? And then on top of that, like the rush, like the adrenaline of falling through the sky doesn't excite me. And then Christian was like, well, how would you know you've never done it? And I was like, I've never sucked a cock before, but I know I'm not gay, brother. And he was like, okay, but like you can't understand like what it's like to fall from the sky. And I was like, I've been in planes.
I don't have interest in it.
I've driven on the highway with the windows down. I know what air feels like in my face. Like, I don't need to try it to know that it's something that I'm not interested in because none of the parts of it are interesting to me.
Yeah, right.
So-
and the risk is too high.
Exactly. For me, right? And risk is different for different people.
Right.
But I wasn't afraid to say no about it, and not in a rude way. I was just like, it's not for me. It's different for you than it is for me. And they like wouldn't leave me alone about it. And I was like, it's the same thing with scuba diving. Like scuba diving's cool. I'm actually way more interested in scuba diving than in skydiving. The difference is I have no knowledge of either of those, and the risk is really high because if you do something wrong, you die. And I don't know anything about it. At least with scuba diving, you have to go through scuba school and get certified before you can do it. Even then, I'm not totally comfortable because I'm not a professional in this scenario. And if I'm putting my life on something, I want to be like involved in it. And then Joel was like, well, you put your life on the line every day that you drive on the highway. And I was like, yeah, big difference there. I know how to drive. And he was like, yeah, but someone could like come across the median and hit you head on the highway. And I was like, yeah, but at least in that scenario, I have something to do about it. Like I can brake or steer out of the way, or like really if there's nothing I can do and like they hit me, like at least there was nothing I could do about it. But I can control whether or not I jump out of a fucking plane.
That's also kind of like a forced risk too. Like it's a choice to go jump out of a plane. It's not really a choice to get to work.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Like you just gotta, that's a risk that's built into your life that you have to mitigate. Like I just don't want to introduce external risks that I have no interest in.
Right.
Right. Like skydiving.
Right.
Like I don't have an interest in introducing that risk into my life because I don't really have a particular interest in jumping out of a plane and seeing how it looks.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll go in a plane and look out the window.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all it
not
is for me. Yeah.
Right? I don't need this fucking like wind in my face jumping out of a plane hoping a chute opens.
Right.
I don't fucking need that.
Right. But I think that was a really awesome example in which I said no and they couldn't understand. And so then they were projecting their emotions back onto me and saying like, oh, well, I think that you just like are too afraid of risk. You're too afraid to live life. And I was like, I live my life to my fulfillment and it's different for you guys. Like,
and risk is different for everyone, right? Like there's somewhere between $3,500 and $4,500 at the moment that moves around between different accounts that I have control over, right? A week, 35 to 4,500 a week that moves around. There are some people that might be like, oh my God, that sounds so risky. Like I could never move around that volume of money per week. And then there's other people that are like, you only move that much around. And then there's me who's like, this was a little bit anxiety ridden at first, but like now I'm kind of used to it and it's all good.
Right.
Like everything will be fine, right? And so it's like, but that's a risk I'm willing to take on because if I have a week that flops, like I could lose $2-3 grand, right? And that's a lot of money to me right now.
Right.
But it's also a risk I'm willing to take because the reward potential is high.
Right.
At least in my eyes, because I'm working really hard on it. And the more work I put into something, the higher probability it's successful.
Right.
And so it's like, that's a risk I'm willing to take, you know?
Yeah.
But it's just about that balance. And, you know, everyone will say no to different things. You just got to find the things that you're not willing to do and just stick to them. Have an alignment between your thoughts, your actions, and your words.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that if you can clearly articulate a no, then it's valid. But if someone's like, no, I don't want to go skydiving because I'm scared, and like they can't quantify that, or no, I'm not willing to like move that $3,500, $4,000 around not because I don't have it, but because I don't want, like, if you don't have a real fucking reason, then like I can understand inquiring, but everyone has a reason at their core, right?
Yeah.
And if the reason is, oh, well, I haven't thought about it, but at first thought it sounds scary, but now that I've thought about it, maybe I'd be interested. Okay, cool. But like, if I'm able to clearly articulate to you that the risk isn't worth the reward for me, but it is for you because you enjoy the rush of skydiving or the, the chance of making more money if you move all this money around at once, right? Then it's worth it for you, but it's just not worth it for me. And it was a really awesome example of how other people aren't always going to understand your position, and they're not always going to agree with it, and they'll call you shit like, oh, like you're just scared to live life or whatever. And they can say things that, if there's an ounce of it that's true, maybe it'll bother you, but if none of it's true, then it doesn't really matter.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Or it's like, how many people have walked up to us over the years of Powhatan and been like, "You guys need to take a week off or like take a vacation or something like that." Like, the volume of people who have like
Yep.
just imposed like their perspective on life.
Yeah.
Right. Like
Tyler's like, I want to see you go dancing. Like, let's go dancing after your first sale. And I'm like, fucking, I don't know, man. Maybe.
maybe, but like not right now. I'm
Yeah.
at the same time, you could throw back on that and be like, when times are easy, that's the time to work harder. Like, that's Hermosi's perspective on it. It's like, if you're having an easy time making money right now, fucking push. Because it's not always easy. Right.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I want to see you like take a break and go dancing. And it's like, I'd like to see you sit down and do some more work. Like, you never say that to someone, right? You never go up and be like, hey man, you've been hanging out a lot lately. You ever considered working harder? That's what I hear. Like, that incredulous, like, what the fuck are you saying?
Right.
That's what hits me when someone's like, you should ease up. And
Yeah.
it's like, fucking why? Like,
Right. But then it's the balance of like, when I start feeling like a shit ass, I might actually say that. But I know that's like
what?
like if someone comes at me and be like, just to take a break, I might be like, you should work a little bit more. Like, I might say that when I'm in that shit ass mood, but I also know that's not the character inside of me. And so it's like when I start to feel that coming out, I'm like, okay, let me dial it back, because like
Yeah.
these people don't deserve the amount of shit that I could come back to that inside my head.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, I gotta just dial it back. Like, I feel like I kind of lose perspective on the fact that like not everyone lives their life in the same way or has the same goals. And I don't expect that out of other people. And I don't expect people to impose their goals and opinions on me. So I should respect their boundaries as they respect mine.
Right.
Right.
And I think that when people tell us to ease up, it's not because it's because they care. It's because they're like, I don't want you to stress yourself out or whatever, right? Like,
Yeah.
I need you to understand that like life is okay if you don't do these things, because they see work as a negative, even though we see work as a positive.
Yeah.
Right.
The goal is the work.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so like we see the world a little bit differently, but most people who are workaholics aren't dialed in. They're not locked in like we are. Like, most people who are workaholics work because they feel the external pressure of judgment of others, and that's why they're working so hard. So when someone comes up to us and says, hey man, you don't have to work that hard, ease up, they are likely assuming that we're similar to most other people who work too hard and sacrifice too much and aren't like earning anything from it, because they feel a need to, right? But we're a little bit different in that we don't feel the need to, we have a want to. And so when people come up and tell us like, hey, maybe ease up a little bit, that's the same advice that should be given to real workaholics out there who like break up with their wife and kids so that they can pursue like greatness in their 9 to 5 and like kiss their boss's ass and like, go learn to golf so that they can intermingle with like the higher ups in their company and stuff, right? Like, people who are a shill to other people, that's another choice. That's another perspective, but it's kind of needless, right?
Yeah.
But most
From our
people,
perspective.
right, most people like don't have a firm grip on what they're doing. And I think that you and I have a solid understanding of the amount of work that we do and the work-life balance that we have on it.
Yeah.
Most people only see us working while they're relaxing, and they think, oh, well, these people should, come toward my side a little bit and relax a little bit more. Whereas, we would say, we're happy with where we're at. Thanks. So, right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really funny. This is related but slightly divergent. I had a call with my therapist like maybe a month and a half ago, 2 months ago. I do it intermittently now.
Cool.
And we were talking about something, and she asked me, she was like, did that trigger you? And in my head, I was like, don't ever fucking ask me that again. It did trigger you. See if it did trigger me. I was like, don't ever fucking ask me if something triggers me again.
Yeah, so it's like,
And it was like,
funny.
but like, I had to approach it with the perspective of like, like, these are the lines that this person has. They're coming at me with honesty, trying to figure out my situation and help me.
right.
I was like, no, this did not trigger me.
Yeah.
But like, also know and like to respect those boundaries and being able, in that case, I had to be able to say no and express my honest opinion instead of like just agreeing with them and jumping into the loop, right? And I didn't think that I was rude by, correcting them on that,
Yeah.
because I did it politely. But that respect and being able to hold your line and your boundaries and being able to say no versus yes to the things that are kind of like the center points of your character and your path in life at this moment, I think is super important.
Yeah, I
You know?
agree. I agree. I think at the core of it, of why saying no isn't a big deal, is just like if it wouldn't offend you if someone said it to you, why do you assume it would offend them, right? Like, what's
Yeah, that's a good point.
why are you imparting what you feel other people would on yourself, right?
Yeah.
And then on top of that, it's if you don't want people to do it to you, why would you do it to them, right? Treat your neighbor how you want to be treated. Don't
Yeah.
lie to someone else if you want them to, if you don't want them to lie back to you, right?
Yeah.
So don't tell people that you have intentions when you really don't, right?
Yeah.
Or when you are not certain. Like a soft no is as bad as like, or I have it in the next section. Whatever. Do you have anything more for this section?
No.
Okay, cool. We'll go straight into section 2 then, which is how to react instead of leading people on. So saying no isn't difficult, but saying no without insulting someone certainly can be. When you're turning someone down, what do you do or avoid doing to make sure that you're clear in your intent to not be rude to them?
I try to iterate the fact that like, hey, I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, but I just don't have the bandwidth, or maybe in some other case I might be like, I don't have the desire to do that and then I try to explain myself. Like I try to give reasoning to it.
Yeah.
Because I think if you just say no, then the other person assumes that you just hate everything that they love about it.
Right.
Right. With skydiving, someone might love the adrenaline rush and the view and the wind and blah, blah, blah. And so then when I just say no with no explanation, they just assume that I hate the adrenaline rush and the view and all that other stuff that they love. And they're like that oftentimes is completely
Right.
the reversal of what's the truth. Like I would probably love the view and I would probably think it's fun, but
Right.
the risk is just too high. So I just try to explain that risk side of things. And, like what you talked about of like a guy packing a bag for $15 an hour, or the guy who's going to have, you're going to throw your life at, in terms of this little activity. And so I think that explaining why is super important. And then also, if you can take the time to not explain it just generically, like I don't have time or I don't want to, are kind of bad answers, kind of taking the extra 30 seconds or a minute to kind of be like, this is why, or this is why I don't have time right now.
Right.
So that it brings a little bit of perspective to it, can really help the conversation when you have to say no to something in your life.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't think it's a bad thing to just say, I don't want to. You just have to be careful with how you phrase it. Because if someone's like, hey, my birthday party's on Saturday, I'd really love it if you would come. And you go, oh, no, I don't want to. That's like, well, fucking, okay, bro. Like, I thought we weren't friends. I was inviting you to something that we were friends about, right?
Yeah.
But if you say like, hey, man, like, listen, I appreciate it. But now isn't a good time for me. I'm really trying to focus on this business thing. Like, I hope you have a good one. I'll write you a card. I'll text you happy birthday on your birthday, but I'm not going to go. Right. I think that's totally fine. And I think that if they're a real friend, they'll understand and respect that.
Yeah.
And if they're a surface level friend, they'll probably get pissy about it.
Alex Ramosi has this great quote. He says, for the good friends in your life, get used to seeing them less.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And so it's like busy people understand busy people are busy. Right.
Yeah.
But if you're not, you won't. And so if someone tells you like, oh, I'm not coming to this thing because I have this thing going on, right? Unless it's something like hugely important, like a marriage or something like that, right? Then it's like, okay, I understand. So like when Tyler said yes to the Rolex 500 last year, I was like, awesome. And then when he didn't go, I was bummed. And so this year when he said yes, we were clear to say, hey man, fucking don't lead us on. Don't say yes if you're not going to. And he showed up and he showed out and he rode with us. He didn't even have the chance to leave, right? And he stuck with it. And so that's a huge improvement in him not leading people on. And I think that Tyler in particular wants to help and please as many people as he can. And sometimes he overpromises and can't deliver. And that's just out of the deficit of like, he wants to help people and then he will literally try to make it work as many times as he can. But sometimes he overcommits and just can't make it happen. And it's not malicious and it's not even intentional. It's just that like, he's got too many spinning plates. Right.
Right.
And when I compare that to Joel, who also said yes to the Rolex, dude, I've never heard Joel say yes to something that he hasn't actually followed through on.
That is true.
Joel's and he's not afraid to say no, which is funny when we had the skydiving conversation, because like I've asked Joel things before and he'll be like, no, man, it's not for me. Just not for me. Just not for me. I'm like, okay, like eating meat. He's a vegan. And I'm like, oh man, you ever try a fucking, I don't know, water buffalo? And he's like, man, nope, not for me. And I'm like, okay. And then when I was like, I don't want to go skydiving, he's like, sounds like you don't like risk, dude. You should try it. You should open your mind up. And I'm like, all right.
Don't like risk. I'm putting everything on the line for real estate. What are you talking about?
Yeah. It's just funny, the dichotomy there. But Joel, for the most part, I think he's really good about saying yes to things and then following through, or not being afraid to say no to things.
Yeah.
But it's been really awesome to see Tyler come around. And I've noticed that with other things in Tyler's life too. Like he won't hard commit to something unless he doesn't do it. Sometimes it still happens, but not as often. But anyways, this is the part that I had from segment 1 that I forgot about. But you want to be clear. A weak maybe is just a slow no. And a slow no is worse than a quick one.
Yeah.
So if you say maybe, it's basically just saying no over time. And saying no over time sucks. Just say no quickly, and it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I've been doing that more lately.
Quick no's.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if someone will ask me if I'm available to do something this weekend, I used to say potentially or maybe.
Yeah.
And then now I say no. And then because I used to say potentially or maybe because I'd be like, I don't know if I'll be free or not. But now I say no because I don't know if I'll be free or not.
Right.
So it's like, if I manage to make it happen, it's better. But it's like my maybes usually turn into no's. And so I'd rather just say no up front. And then if I can make it, I'll be like, actually, I might have a little bit of time.
Right.
That offer's still open.
Right.
Right. Because it's like, I can be like, no, I'm not free this weekend because I have X, Y, and Z things. And I don't know how they're going to line up time-wise. And these have to take priority because of this reason. Right. And then just say no. But then, if those X, Y, and Z things get done faster, then I can come back to them maybe day of or day before and be like, hey, actually, this is going really well. If you still want to do that thing, it does sound fun to me. I had these things, I finished them up. Do you still want to do that? Right. So
I think that's great. It's like setting expectations low and then either meeting those low expectations or exceeding them. Right. So it's like, it's
rather over-deliver than under-deliver.
Yeah, if you make a bunch of small dick jokes and then you get the girl in the bedroom and you have a small dick, she's like, well, he said it. And if you have a huge dick, she's like, whoa. Like, she's like, but if you talk about having a big dick and then you get in the bedroom, like, it's either like you meet expectations or you don't meet them. And so it's like you never exceed those expectations if you brag about it all the time, right?
Yeah.
So the first bullet point I have written for this section is, if you're unsure, don't say yes or maybe right away. It's okay to take a second to think about it. And what your example is taking that into action and actually saying no right away, and then being like, well, okay, actually, yes, I can, or sticking with the no. And I think that's a great method. It's just default should be no, and then, oh wait, actually, I check my calendar and I can.
Yeah.
Right. But if your default answer is no for like everything, then no one's going to be offended if you don't. If you don't do it, right?
Right.
Because like that's your default. Another thing I have written is, if you can't commit but are genuinely interested, offer rescheduling or compromise.
Yeah, I've done that a lot lately too.
Really great, yeah. And if you can't reschedule it or something, but you really can't do it, like the Space Coast crew board meeting, I got Justin texted me at work on Friday, and he was like, hey, there's a board meeting tomorrow morning. Chris sent out the email last night, Thursday night, and he realized that you weren't on the mailing list. I was like, oh. So I logged into my Space Coast account, and I had gotten the email that Chris sent to us on Friday. And he was like, there's a meeting tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. at Panera. And I was like, I'm not going to that. Like, it's way too late to be scheduling that shit. Like, I don't have anything scheduled at 7 a.m. tomorrow. But I stayed up till 2 a.m. last night working on real estate stuff because I got this unexpected lead that I wanted to work. So I learned about foreclosures, and now I'm behind on my brokerage questions. So tonight, it's Pizza Friday at Pauhana, and I'm here at 11 p.m. and I'm just now finding out there's a meeting at 7 a.m. I'm going to keep working till 12, and then I'm going to go home and go to sleep. And I'm going to sleep in tomorrow morning until 10 because I've gone to bed late the last 2 nights, and I want to have a good Saturday to crank out a bunch of errands. Oh my God, I totally forgot in my life update. Dude, I fucking crushed yesterday. I got so many errands and stuff done.
Oh, nice.
One of the errands I got done, my storage unit sent me a notice. So here's a breakdown of my storage unit. I have a 10 by 10 air-conditioned storage unit. You've been to it. It's great, right? The rate is like $50 a month, which is so competitive. Everywhere else, the same space is like $200 a month. And so when I signed up, I did like a special deal where it was like, it's only $50 a month. And I was like, awesome. And the guy, when he was signing me up, he was like, listen, in 6 months, they're going to try and bump your rent up. When they do, just let them know that you talked to me and they can keep it the same. And I was like, okay. So 6 months goes by. They try to up my rent to like from 50 to like 75. And I go, hey, my friend, whatever. And they were like, okay, sure. So they kept it at 50, right? Well, I'm now nearing the 1 year mark. And I'm realizing I signed a contract. It's not a time contract. It's month to month, not annual. So I'm not locked into a specific rate, but periodically they'll send out rate increases and I have to fight it every time. Well, I don't remember if the special deal I got is a 1 year deal or not. So I was like, fuck, like, I don't know. They wanted to increase my rent. Right now I pay $80 a month because I have $50 in rent and $30 in insurance. I fucked up because they asked me, when I got my contract, they were like, what's the value of the stuff in your storage unit? I was like, my whole Lego collection's in there. So like probably 20 grand. And they were like, cool. So they gave me the $30 a month insurance policy. And so I was like, fuck. So they're going from $80 a month to $170 a month. And I was like, I can't fucking do that. So I went to the storage unit on Saturday, ready to go to war about this. And I walked in and I was like, hey, listen, I got a letter in the mail saying you guys want to over double my current rate. And I want to keep my current rate. And the lady was like, sounds good. You got an email on Monday and it'll be all right. And I was like, oh, okay. While I'm at it, can I decrease my insurance policy? And she was like, sure. What do you want to change it to? And I was like, okay. So like I went from paying $80 a month and facing paying $170 a month to paying $60 a month. So now I'm paying $20 less than I normally would.
Right.
And when I was faced with paying over double. And that was a huge win for me because I was freaking out. I was like, I can't do $300 a month brokerage.
That's how I was with drop shipping to start too. I was like, I would get these bills and I'd be like, fuck, how am I going to pay this?
Right.
Or like, or like the credit card with the 0% APR. Like I have like $2,000 of expenses on it.
Right.
And like, I know that like past Sander would be like, oh fuck, like I got to pay this off as soon as possible.
Right.
But like now Sander is like, don't worry about it. Like,
yeah,
it's cool. Like you're flowing it over here. You're doing something here. It's not all going to clear up immediately. Like you're going to have to work on it. And then if it even fucking fails, it's $2,000. Like it's not the end of the fucking world. You figure it out, right?
You know what to do?
So it's just like chill.
You know what to do if you hit the end of that year, right?
Get another credit card.
Transfer to a new 0% APR credit card. Yeah.
Yeah. I already like, that initial mentality is like that freak out, like, fuck, what am I going to do?
Exactly.
But like the more you go through it, the more you realize like, hey, like it's a number.
Yep.
You'll get it. It's going to be cool. You're flowing over here. Stay on your direction. Freaking the fuck out about it ain't going to fucking change it.
Right.
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 And it's like, I know I've said that before, but like the more I go through the process, the more it really solidifies.
Yeah.
Because like on Friday, I was in an ass piss mood because on Thursday, I'd purchased my incense subscription for $550 on a trial for a month. Right. Which is a lot of money for me. Right. And then on Friday, I found out I got the wrong one. So I was like, fuck it. I'm going to get the right one this time. And then spent another $1,000 fucking dollars on the right one, right? Because I didn't want to wait. So my mentor texted me. He was like, hey, you got the wrong one. Look again and get the right one.
Right.
I was like, okay. I looked a little bit. I didn't watch the videos like all through and through because it's like 2 hours of videos. I'm like, there's only 3 subscription options I'd see, right?
Yeah.
I'm just going to get the next one because he said it was $500 a month, right? And $1,500 for 3 months translates to $500 a month. So I was like, okay, this is the one I need now. I got it, right? I got that one, right? No, wrong one, right? So another $1,000. I messaged him and he was like, hey man, it's still the wrong one. Like you got to look, like you got to do this product seeding thing. Right. And so then I really started digging into the site and figuring it out, right? And like maybe it wasn't clear. I still don't think it was clear in the videos. Right. And the videos are about 1.5 years old. So some of like the formatting and stuff has changed. So maybe they've changed their subscription layout initially. And that's why they have the demo call for this product seeding thing. Or maybe they hide the product seeding thing because they don't want people to do it because they want to make the mistake that I did, which is spend $1,500 up front instead of doing $500 a month for free content. Rather than doing $1,500 every 3 months that you're locked into and also paying for the content through their platform that they take fees on. Like maybe there's a little bit of incentive at the company to hide that product seeding thing.
Grace theorized that's why the storage unit sent me in the mail the rent increase and not an email because they think that people are just going to forget and not spot it.
Right. So like maybe there's some strategy on the company side of things and that's why I struggled with it a little bit more this time. And that's why he didn't struggle with it because he's been doing this for 4 years and he's like, this is like the back of his hand for him. Right. But like for me, like Friday, I was like, fuck. Like I was like, I just spent $1,500 because I was trying to solve this issue as quickly as possible. And it's like, I got to take a step back and be like, okay, Like, I can't spend my Saturday, Sunday freaked out about this. I got a call on Monday, chill the fuck out, right?
Right.
We'll deal with it Monday. Worst case scenario, if they're like, no, you got to pay another $500 for this product seating thing, it's 25% of what I've already paid up front, and it's to get the right thing. Like, I'm already so close to the finish line. Just fucking make it happen. Maybe this other thing that I bought will actually prove useful down the line. I don't know, right?
Right.
It's going to be okay. It's $2,000 max right now that I would have spent on this. And if it fucking increases my return on ad spend by even 20%, I'll make that back definitely within the 3 months before my next payment of $1,500 for this other thing that I bought.
Right.
Like, it's all going to be good, right? And so it's like, just like decompressing, and like the more I go through these challenges, the more I'm able to like concretely address it with a calm attitude rather than just like panic about it, versus like old me might have just panicked about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I've kind of had that for a while. Michael Jordan has this great quote, which is, why would I think about missing a shot I haven't taken yet? And it's kind of like that. It's like, why? Okay, the storage unit is saying that they're going to increase my rent. I'm renewing my lease for my apartment complex, right? And so they sent me the new lease. My lease is up in 2.5 weeks. So like kind of cutting it close to the wire, because if I'm moving, I fucking need more heads up than that, right? But they sent me the lease, and so I read through it, and some of it was wrong. And so I went back into the front. Like, I could have freaked out and been like, oh shit, they're going to charge me this like fucking $3,000 upfront security deposit, which now apparently they're charging new applicants. I'm not fucking paying that, because the ownership changed.
yeah,
I'm not fucking paying that.
Yeah, you're not an old applicant.
Exactly. And so I went into the office and I was like, hey, I think this is a misunderstanding. Like, this doesn't apply to me, but it says it does in the lease, so we have to change it. She was like, oh, you're right. And so same deal with the storage unit. It's like, why am I freaking out about this payment that I haven't made yet? Like, they can't just pull it out of my fucking bank account. I have to approve it.
Right.
So,
But
like,
there's a
why
part
worry
of
about-
you that like wants to go to war about it immediately.
I was
and I
prepared.
fucking conquered it. Right.
prepared.
And that's how I feel too.
Right.
But it's like the more I go through stuff like this, the more I'm able to like shove that down and be like, reason and logic.
Right.
Come on, man. Like, it's 2 days. You got to wait for this fucking call. Chill the fuck out. Like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying to myself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To kind of like decompress myself.
I
right?
have that dog in me in case.
I do too. That's why I fucking was like, just fucking buy it. You know what I mean? I was just like, fuck it. $1,500 up front, just fucking make it happen. I got to get this shit moving. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's my attitude in that moment.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's a part of me, I still am figuring this out. How do I balance the fast-paced getting it done with the logical, you can't solve every issue in 5 minutes.
Right.
Right? Like, I got to balance that, because there's a part of me, I think it sort of stemmed from the fact that like, I may be working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day, but the people who are customer support for these companies may be working 5 days a week, 9 hours a day.
Right.
Right. And so it's like, in my perspective, I'm like, why are you not responding to my message at 10 p.m. on a Sunday?
Right.
Versus their perspective may be like, why don't you just wait until Monday morning, dog?
Right.
Right. And so it's like, I got to kind of like balance that act.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. I follow the logic of, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, right? So like, try to be nice at first, or try to be like, hey, I think there's a misunderstanding. Like, let's get this fixed. And then if they push back, have the stick ready, right? Offer the carrot, and if they don't take it, beat the fuck out of them with the stick.
Right.
So like, when I went to the storage unit, I had all my documentation. Right now, the storage unit is running the same sale that I started on. So I think it's one of those Black Friday deals where they're like, oh, it's marked down 50%, but it's
That's what I do on
still
my
no
site.
price.
For anyone who's gone to my site, that 50% off today only.
Yeah. It's just the price edit, right? They have that on their website right now. And so I was fully prepared to be like, listen, here's my contract that I signed up for a year ago. Here's the renewal at the same reduced rate. Here's your online offering right now. Just let me do this. If not, I'll cancel my contract and I'll move out at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And then I'll start a new contract on your current online rate, which is the same one I have now. And you can just make my new unit the same unit I have right now, and we can run it that way. And if you're going to be a shit about it, I'll cancel mine. I'll schedule my move out date for the end of the month. I'll bring my girlfriend in here who hasn't had an account before. She'll get the 1 year online reduced rate, and we can just make it the same unit number. I'm going to get out of this with the rate that I want in the unit that I'm in.
Right.
So like, you choose, right? I had the stick rate, but I went in there and I was like, I think there's a misunderstanding. They're trying to increase my rate. She was like, no worries, right? So it's like, I think the ideal scenario, especially for like a man in business, is to not come out way aggressive initially, but come at it understanding, and then have it in your back pocket.
Yeah, but
Have it
having
ready.
it takes time, at least for me, to be able to execute that because it takes
Because you want to attack
it
right
takes
away.
experience and time for me to be able to understand that. Like 3 years ago, me might have just attacked initially because I just created all these assumptions.
Dude, Mason and Sander were ruthless.
Yeah, right. So it's like it's taken me time to build that, right? And so I'm still building, and I anticipate I'll build it for my entire life, right? Because I assume I'll get to one day where instead of worrying about like a $300 loss today, I might be worrying about a $300,000 loss,
Right.
right? And so it's like it will take time and experience for me to build that, but I'm just in the process of building that, and we're obviously documenting that journey.
Right.
But it's just like it's interesting to see those changes and like that growth period and like going through that stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It's interesting to think back and go like, okay, when we were in SAE, did we just attack everything immediately, or did we give a little bit of grace? Because I think in some instances it was like way aggressive, way fast, and like maybe needlessly, but that was our leadership style, right? Like
there were other times where we gave a lot of grace.
That's right.
Like with Frank and the fucking air intake. Like we could have torn him a new asshole fucking 5 minutes after that happened, but we were like, hey, like this is fucked up.
Yeah.
But we believe in you and please improve. And then he didn't improve, and then it was a problem. But
I was pretty rough with him at that meeting though. Like he tried to leave, and I was like, don't go anywhere. Like you stay right here. And everyone was like, oh fuck.
yeah.
But
But also it should have been Reuter for sure. Because I remember we talked about it after, and like my question was like, why didn't you get on him more, right? Because I was in that frame of mind of like just fucking kill this kid a new asshole immediately, right?
Well, you and I had the benefit of briefing about it beforehand, where we were like throwing names and shit. So that way, when we got into him in person, well, listen, yeah, we said a lot of shitty things about you to each other in our free time, but like, listen, right?
Yeah.
Trish was a better option, where we were like checking in on her for months, and then at a certain point, it reached a boiling point where we like flamed the shit out of her in the Discord, and she called us like pissing off, right? But it was like, dude, like we've given you opportunity after opportunity to prove yourself. You haven't, so now we're gonna publicly execute you, and we did. Yeah. And like, guess what? After that, she started reading the fucking arrow book. So like, sometimes you have to use the stick.
Yeah.
And like maybe we could have gotten a fucking actual nose cone done if we had hit her with the stick in September instead of December. But like, I don't know, dude, deciding when, in rowing, there's a capability that only like 10-year rowers have that kids in high school don't, which is knowing exactly how much energy you have left, because you don't want to finish a race. Like some races come down to 1/10 of a second. I've been in multiple races that finished within 1/10 of a second, which for cars isn't a big deal, but for like fucking like you are the engine for sports, that's really close. And you want to end a race with exactly 0% left. You don't want to overdo it, because then your last stroke of the race is going to be weaker and you're going to lose out that 1/10. And you don't want to have any extra, because if you lose out by 1/10, you could have like maybe made it, right? So you want to end up with exactly 0. And you only get that after like years of doing it, right? And I recognize that that's a skill that kids aren't going to have until they've done it for 10 years. And similarly, I recognize the skill of when to use the carrot and when to use the stick isn't one that I'm going to pick up tomorrow. But I'm going to learn over time, okay, in what scenarios do I need to be aggressive right away? In what scenarios should I try the carrot first? And how long do I carrot it before I start to stick it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another thing I missed from the My Life update is I'm considering canceling my withholding, because if Trump cancels the IRS, then like, why give the IRS my money now, right? Like,
Yeah.
just remember, like, okay, I should probably have.
Honestly, what you
savings
could
set
do
aside.
is just withhold it yourself.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Right.
I would do
Like,
that.
cancel the withholding and then just put it in another bank account and don't touch it until you have confirmation that
It'll be
there's
like
gonna
a
not
Ronnie
be
May
any income tax.
Yeah, what people are doing right now is deferring their taxes for this year. They're requesting a deferment for 6 months, because if the IRS is just nixed, then they keep that tax money, right? Of course, we have withholding, so I want my refund. Don't cut the IRS yet. Get me my refund and then cut it, right?
Right.
But for next year, like, I mean, we're 2 months in, and I probably have like fucking
Multiple
$800.
thousands.
Not
I would
bad.
say I get like 700 a paycheck.
Oh,
billed,
yeah.
right?
Yes. Okay, yeah. I'm forgetting that we're withholding all taxes,
Right.
not just a percentage. Because my refund is like $4,600. So 4,600 divided by 12 times 2 isn't.
Oh, I got you.
But-
Yeah, because the income tax is different than the Social Security. And
Right, it is thousands, because in total it's like 15% of all of my income, and I think so far I've gotten like
Right.
20K or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it probably is that.
Yeah, I'm like, on the paper I make 72, but in reality I think I only get like 50.
Right.
Right. So if you take 22 divided by 12, or 2 months in, that's a few thousand right there.
I don't know. Like, I know that on your W-4 you can check the box that is like exempt from withholding. But I thought you could only check that box if you were making less than the standard deduction each year. So I don't know how to actually tell Northrop to stop withholding entirely, and I'm going to do it myself. I don't know if employers are allowed to do that. I don't know.
I'm gonna look liability concern there.
I'm going to look into it. I'm the liability.
Question though.
I'm the liability. I also need to figure out my 401k, which I will be cashing out as soon as I quit my job. I can't do any of it because Northrop needs you to prove hardship, and guess what? I'm pretty close. But when I leave, I can take all of it with me, right? Right now I have like 7,000 in that account. But I think that's 7,000 that I have put in throughout my internships and first year working. I think that Northrop is supposed to match that for 14,000 because after 3 years you're fully vested. I'm pretty
My
sure I'm
company
fully
matches
vested.
it as they input it. So if I put in 150 in 1 week, then they'll put in 150 in 1 week.
What's your vesting period?
What's vesting mean?
So your first 3 years, they'll match you, but if you leave, they keep their half. After 3 years, you own the half that they've put in.
No idea.
Mine's a 3-year period. So on paper, I've been a full-time employee for almost 2 years now,
God.
not the 3 years, meaning that if I leave, I keep my $7,000, not the $7,000 that Northrop should have also put in. So I don't get 14, I get 7.
Yeah.
But my internship is supposed to count toward that vesting period. So I should have double what I put in because I was fully,
Got it.
I fully.
I have to look back at my contract to figure that out.
Yeah, but nowhere I use it's Fidelity. Nowhere in Fidelity does it tell me, hey, this is how much you've put in and this is how much your employers match. I'm very certain that the $7,000 is stuff that I have contributed. Meaning, before I leave, I need to make sure that I'm going to get what Northrop gave me.
Not
cheap because-
3,500.
Exactly. Not 3,500 and not 7,000. If I only put in 3,500, I want to make sure I get my $7,000. But if I put in $7,000, I want to be damn sure that I'm getting 14.
Right.
So I have to double check that. And I don't know who to talk to about it because Northrop is terrible with their fucking like employee accounting.
Yeah, ours is terrible too because I actually have a completely separate system within a separate system that does
Ours
it,
is the same way.
and it's just
It's AIDS.
it's like
Yeah, everybody you talk to, they're like, "Oh, it's not us, it's someone else." And you're like, "Who?" And they're like, "I don't know."
Yeah.
Anyways,
same thing with us. Too.
so when you're how to react instead of leading people on, saying the phrase "that doesn't work for me" is a really great way of saying, no, but I'm still interested.
Hmm.
So if it's no and not interested, you just be like, no, it doesn't interest me. But if you are interested, you could say, no, that doesn't work for me, and then follow with a compromise, which is what if we did something else, or oh no, it doesn't work for me, but I wish I could go, or something like that.
Yeah. And you could also tie in the why explanation to that. That doesn't work for me because.
Right. Yeah. No, because is great.
Yeah.
Don't say yes if you know you'll regret it later. Disappointing someone for 1 second is better than stringing them along and disappointing them over weeks, which is kind of like the week maybe is a slow no, and a slow no is worse than a quick no. That's what I have for segment 2.
That is also what I have for segment 2.
Segment 3, the long-term benefits of saying no. I think learning to say no strategically will benefit every long-term relationship hands down. People learn to trust your word more. They'll realize the importance when you do say yes, and you'll build respect with those people because they'll know you aren't blowing smoke up their ass. That's my introduction to this. I thought I had more written there. Usually I end these with a question. Anyways, what do you think the long-term benefits of saying no are?
Well, I think generally speaking, if you just say no to everything and anything, it's probably not in your long-term benefit because then people will just never go to you for anything unless that's your goal. Like if you just want to be a solo person and like not ever interact with anyone ever, right? Then yeah, long-term benefit of saying no to everything is just fucking you will not get anyone asking from you for anything, right?
Right. No,
But I think that it's important to also have a balance in the people in your life and have that relationship with them. I think there are definitely long-term benefits of learning how to say no. Because if you learn how to say no, you inherently also learn how to be honest about what you can and can't do.
Right.
And that solidifies you as a person whose word, thoughts, and actions are in alignment.
Right. Authentic.
Yeah, and therefore you are authentic. And I think authentic people are probably the best people to be around.
Yeah. I have the same thing. I think people trust your yes when they know that your no is real.
Yeah.
So if you say no and aren't afraid to say no, then when you do eventually say yes, they know that you're committing to it, right?
It's like the apology thing where it's like only say sorry when you really mean that you're sorry. And otherwise, like if you walk into a meeting late, you're like, thank you for your patience.
Yep.
If you don't actually like feel super sorry about it,
Right.
rather than saying I'm sorry, I'm late.
Right.
That way, when you actually say you're sorry, it actually means something.
Exactly. Yeah, it's exactly that. And that's great because not only do they trust your yeses more, but they also trust your nos. So like in some instances, people will say no and they don't really mean it. And you aren't sure how they really feel about it. And if you just say no or just say yes, then and you follow through with it, then I mean your word becomes more reputable, right? So
Yeah.
that builds trust in those relationships, and that stems from authenticity. I think authenticity breeds trust, um, which is a net positive. I think
I would agree.
in spirit, you also get the chance to experience how people respect or violate your boundaries, and that can clearly define the state and health of a relationship of a person. So if you say no to someone and they get pissy or ignore you entirely, that's a red flag. You want someone who's going to respect the boundaries that you set. So if you say no to something and they like constantly pester you to do it, like me convincing Joel to come on the podcast, Joel, then they're not respecting your boundaries like I'm with Joel. But um, in general, I think that you get to understand how you lay in a relationship with someone, not just romantic, but like in any relationship. Romantic is a good one too, but
Yeah.
for anyone, right? If they ignore what your position is, then like how the fuck are you supposed to cooperate with that person in any capacity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What else?
That's kind of all I had, besides what we've already talked about, to be honest.
I think agreeing to things you don't actually agree with is speaking and acting in conflict to your thoughts, and that's inauthentic. So authenticity again. That's what this whole third segment is really about, I think.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the benefits of building it long term is just being more authentic. And I think that saying no is a mechanism to become more authentic. So like the outcome of this entire podcast is just this is one of the ways that you can be a more authentic person.
Learning how to say no.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
even if you say no and you are shit about it, it's still authenticity. You're just authentically kind of an ass.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Which can also be beneficial to know.
Yeah.
Like if someone's just a piece of shit and, that's how they act all the time. Like, I honestly, I think I'd have, actually, I don't even think, I'm pretty confident in that the people in my life who have acted like a shit ass, but always gone through with what they said, I've respected more and worked with better than the people who committed to things that they couldn't pull through on.
Yeah.
Like I've worked with some people, even at NASA, like technicians, who I'll be like, let's say, are you willing to stay an extra 30 minutes to clean up this stuff from the operation we did so that, it can help expedite this process? And they'll be like, nah, I ain't fucking doing that. It's 10 p.m. And then they'll leave.
Right.
Right. Like I have more respect for that than like someone who'd be like, yeah, I'll help you out real quick. Let me use the bathroom. And they spend 30 minutes in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Like it's like the first person was a shit ass, but at least I knew where they were going and what they were doing. The second person, I anticipated they were going to follow through and then they fucking didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of like how like Greg isn't the most polite person, but he means what he says and he tells how he feels, right?
You're right.
So it's like even if you disagree with him, at least you respect that he's being honest about it, right?
Yeah.
Whereas some other people, like you can tell when you're in a conversation with someone and they're just trying to say things that they know you want to hear. And
Yeah.
that sucks because you're hearing what you want to hear, but not how you want it to be said because it's not legitimate.
It's not honest.
Right. Exactly. And then how do you trust that person? Even if they're telling you things that you don't want to hear. And then if they're telling you things that you don't want to hear and they're inauthentic about it, it's like, what the fuck are we doing? Like we're not hitting any of the boxes here. Right.
Yeah.
So what's an example of that? When someone says something that you don't want to hear and they're not being authentic about it either, like how they don't really agree. I guess that's interesting because it means that they are kind of on your same page. So maybe like politically, if someone's more centralist, but they want to identify with more liberal things because it's more self-righteous and they want to like accuse you of something, but they're actually don't believe in it either. Like they're more centrist.
Yeah. Like trans women in women's sports is a hot one right now.
Yeah.
That a lot of people are like inside may feel like, hey, this is a little bit whack, but on the outside they'll be like, this is so wrong. You can't ban this, blah, 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 blah.
Right. But they don't feel that they can actually concede that point because then maybe they're wrong. You at the other liberal things that you might disagree with the person you're talking about with.
Yeah. Yeah. People pleasing.
Yeah.
It kind of ties into it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's shitty because it's like, why can't we compartmentalize and just have a conversation about like this specific topic at hand? Like, why does there have to be implications to like other things that aren't related at all?
Yeah.
Right. It's just making assumptions that aren't necessary. I have that problem with a lot of Jordan Peterson stuff because he'll say, well, if this, then that, and if that, then this, and then making this assumption, then that, and then here's the outcome. And so it doesn't make sense. And it's like, whoa. We made a lot of inferences to get here. So I understand the hypothetical, but like the exception isn't the rule and the hypothetical isn't law. So like we have to understand that there's a little bit of hoops that we're jumping through here.
Yeah.
But with the trans woman stuff, it's like, I feel like people are afraid of saying like, like let's say you're a leftist and you're like, oh, okay, I can agree with the trans stuff. And then you go, right, see, isn't universal healthcare retarded? And they go, whoa, like, hang on, right?
Yeah.
I did have a thought the other day. I was listening to the Wall Street Journal podcast on all the insurance companies backed out of the homes in the California fires before the fires started, right? And everyone's all pissy about it. But I thought to myself, I was like, if I was running an insurance company, would I insure something that is definitely going to burn down? Probably not. I'd probably back out of it, right? And that's not fair.
Their business.
Yeah, it's not fair to the people because then they don't have any insurance, but also it's kind of a red flag. Like if your insurance company is backing out, like if your health insurance is backing out after you get a CAT scan, not looking good, brother. Not looking good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you can't do anything about that with the cancer. And I have a huge amount of sympathy for those people, but you can always move out of the fucking fire zone, right? Most people don't want to because it's their home and they have equity in it.
Some people can't afford it, and I get it. But at the same time, I'm like,
Right.
you did make the choice to live in an area that has wildfires every single year, and you are banking on your insurance company that is a business to make money off of you,
Yep.
not moving out because there are fires every year.
Right.
Like, let's do a simple train of logic here.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like everyone got like fucking real riled up with the Luigi Maniongi assassination, which upset me because like you can't take the law into your own hands like that. That's fucked up. Even if you don't believe like in insurance companies and whatever, like even if you think health insurance is a scam, right? Then don't fucking buy it, right?
Yeah.
And their claim is that, well, the health insurance companies are lying to you saying they're going to cover something when they're not. But I think if you read the fine print, they're pretty clear about saying like, hey, if we see some sketch shit, like we're going to pull out because we don't want to lose money on you, right? Because really, if you think about it, the only way health insurance makes money is on healthy people who die young. Because everybody, when they get old enough, needs to pay for medical bills. So insurance companies make money on the 40-year-old who died of a sudden heart attack and like died at home, didn't get an ambulance, right? Because no net loss on that guy. They just made money on that guy, right? And then how much of that can they use to cover your like, whatever, your fucking broken leg because you were jumping on a trampoline and fell wrong, right? And then I had this realization, which is, okay, the problem is that not only do insurance companies need to make enough money to cover the costs that they're covering for everyone else, but they also have to make a profit to pay their employees and their CEOs, right? And so the issue is that they're for profit. If you add, so like it's not a closed system. Mass flow in does not equal mass flow out, right?
Yeah.
Because some of it is leaching into the paying their employees and like directors and stuff, right? Well, what if you had insurance that was totally nonprofit? So all of the money that they get from clients goes back to clients. That would be pretty cool, right? But the problem is, I don't want, and you could say, well, okay, yeah, make it funded by like tax dollars. So like the people running the actual company are paid by taxpayers. But guess what? Then I'm still paying for John breaking his fucking leg by jumping on a trampoline. Every fat person who ate their way into their illness, I don't want to pay for it, right?
Yeah.
And then I had another thought, which is, okay, what if you have insurance only cover things that were totally happenstantial and not caused by anything? So like, I have a lot of sympathy for people who are subject to hurricane damage, right?
Yeah.
Because like people living in like Texas don't feel that they're at huge risk of hurricanes because you're in inland Texas, right? But hurricanes still rip through there. They can't help it. I feel for those people. A lot of the people who lost their homes to the fire damage, I feel for them. Even if the government's to blame, they're not to blame, right?
Yeah.
People who get cancer, like you can't help that, right? If you ate your way into fucking diabetes, I'm not paying for that and no one should, right?
Yeah.
But I would be happy to have my tax dollars go toward an insurance that helps people who are subject to things that aren't their fault, right? That would be cool. And I think that's a really awesome compromise that I haven't heard anyone say to like universal health care.
Yeah. Because there's this whole stigma around like, it's not the fault of fat people that they're fat.
Yeah.
Or other things like that. Or it's like, it's not the fault of the people that they can't exercise. And I'm like,
shit, it is.
yeah.
Okay. If you can't exercise, that's cool. Eat less.
Yep.
That's thermodynamics talk. Dude, Christian was talking to me the other day about how he's been running more because he wants to get in better shape, but he's not actually losing any weight. And I was like, oh, like, why? Why aren't you losing any weight? And he's like, well, I eat like shit. And I was like, why bother working out then if you're going to eat like shit? And he was like, well, I want to check one of the boxes. Like I sleep pretty well, but I want like diet and exercise I don't do. So I'm going to like start with exercise and then hopefully I can get the diet down later. And I was like, okay, sure. And he was like, but my knees hurt from running. And I was like, have you tried a lower impact sport like rowing or cycling or something like that, swimming? And he was like, no, like, I'm getting the recline bike to go biking with Joel, which is cool. but like not swimming or anything like that. And I was like, dude, you should try swimming. And he was like, why? And I was like, have you ever noticed that swimmers are really jacked with a really low body fat? And he was like, no. Well, he's noticed it, but he doesn't know why. And it's because your body produces a certain amount of heat to operate. And then it produces X amount more heat to work your muscles to exercise. But if you're exercising in a pool, the convection from water constantly pulling that layer of heat off of your body needs to produce exponentially more heat to continue working your muscles and keeping your body operating, meaning it burns more fat.
Yeah.
So go to Gleason and do laps. And he was like, dude, that's a great idea. I was like, yeah, like you can still eat like, dude, fucking pro athletes eat like ass and they eat a lot, but they work out constantly. So like, you know, you don't have to eat healthy to be fit. You just have to work out a lot. And likewise, you don't have to work out to not be fat. You just have to eat less, right?
Yeah.
So like there's a give and take. But like, you know, with fat people who have medical problems, if you're eating yourself into medical problems, like that's a huge issue, right? And like, unless you're a fucking amputee, and even then the Paralympic athletes are fucking like ripped. So get out of my face. You know what I mean? Like you got to have, like, if you're paralyzed from the neck down, I get it. But other than that, anyways, that's enough ranting about fat people and insurance. I think that I've covered everything that I need to say on why saying no doesn't have to be dickish. It can easily be dickish, but it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Do you
I
have
would agree.
anything else?
Not really.
Okay,
No.
cool.
I think good.
We'll dial in then. My quote this week, I thought it was an Alex Ramosi quote, but I looked it up online. There's actually a website that will write a transcript for your podcast, and then it publishes that. So it was in a Chris Williamson podcast, and Chris Williamson said it, not Alex Ramosi.
Was it 11 Labs?
What?
11 Labs? Was that the company?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Is
Oh,
that what they do?
Well, 11 Labs does a lot of really great AI transcript and voiceover work. That's
Gotcha.
where I got my better voiceovers from.
Gotcha.
And that's where Lex Friedman, he uses 11 Labs to translate his podcast into other languages.
Right.
So I was just curious. But
Yeah, I'm not sure what it was called.
Okay.
But it had the whole thing written out with timestamps and everything, which is super cool. So I went back and I found Chris Williamson said it, not Alex Ramosi. But it's, if I can't trust your no, how can I trust your yes? And that's very close to what I had written out when I was writing my notes, which is, where was it? What was it? Is it on this page? Oh, people trust your yes when they know your no is real.
Oh, yeah. Very, very similar.
So it's kind of like the flip of that. It's a mirror. But Chris Williamson said it. And it's funny because that's where I got it from. Like, that's what I was thinking about when I wrote it. And then I was like, oh, he said it a little bit differently in this. I thought it was Hermosi. I couldn't find it anywhere, but I eventually found it.
Gotcha.
So anyways,
Cool.
that's what I got.
Sweet. Well, have a great week. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.